Hope everybody is doing well. It's time for another online dinner party. We've got at least two amazing guests, and we'll see who else decides to join and all in that way. And of course, we've got all kinds of things happening here in Durham, North Carolina. The weather is pretty good, even though it did get a little bit cooler because we were definitely having almost summer-like temperatures with some temperatures in like the 70s and 80s. I want to say it's been more like the 60s and even some lows in the evenings of around the 40s and all along those lines. So it definitely was a little bit chillier than I was expecting yesterday. Thought I was going to be having to head off as I usually do on Wednesday after this show to the Cultural Arts Center that I am part of and all in that space because they have three dance classes back to back to back. So on Monday, it is African dance for women. On Tuesday, it is ballet. And on Wednesday, and she was actually going to be one of our guests today, it is yoga. So I'd actually talked to Kiki, and she was going to be a guest on the show. But unfortunately, she's having some medical issues. So she is actually over there in the hospital and hopefully getting taken care of and will hopefully be on the show later. But of course, that also means that yoga class won't be happening. So any of you young ladies that were hoping to get over there and take yoga, it won't be happening on this particular Wednesday, even though it will be happening next Wednesday. And on Saturday, I'll be back at that center because we've got our young people that are doing all kinds of things, and they've got a arts intensive where they're learning everything from storytelling to how to understand their family's history to how to do African drumming and even some dance classes and a number of other kind of classes as well. I think they're even learning about robots and drones. So they're learning all kinds of things. And then on a event that's been going on an annual basis now for a while, they have Women at Work. So this will be a bunch of women that are performers, and they'll be celebrating the fairer sex, as folks like to say, and all in that space. And that'll be taking place on this Saturday afternoon. And I know that Andrea Valdez Cortez, if I'm remembering her name correctly, has been organizing that for a while. So it ought to be a fun event. And at that event, there will be poetry, there will be some people doing dance, there'll be vendors, there'll be a number of other things. As a matter of fact, my boss just called me because they like to celebrate the women and have the women do a variety of the work, including the work behind the scenes. So they were trying to find a woman photographer to come take pictures. And I've already recommended two of them, my good friend Pat Murray, as well as Jamila Davenport. And hopefully one of those two can come through and take the pictures at that particular event. And like I said, there'll be vendors, there'll be some food trucks, there'll be folks that'll be selling some jewelry and other wares at the event. And of course, there'll be a lot of celebration through performance of women in general. So that ought to be fun. And I'm looking forward to being there. Who knows? I might even find some very attractive young ladies that come to the events because I'm still in that single space as well. So who knows what'll happen in that sense. If nothing else, I'll see some friends of mine that'll be there because I also have a number of lady friends that are been in my life for a number of years. So we'll see if they show up and what goes on in that way. And we know a lot of folks are paying attention to March Madness. So yeah, March Madness is going on as well. I know that a lot of people were griping about the conference that my team is part of, even though they all had high seeds, including my team. But they were griping because a lot of people felt that the Big East did not get enough bids, but they didn't really help their case with what happened in the NIT. I think three of those five teams that wound up going to the NIT have wound up losing, and one of them decided not to go at all. So I believe it was Seton Johns that decided not to go and all in that space. But they still got a couple of shots because Villanova is still in it and St. John's is in it in terms of the NIT. But I am a graduate of Marquette. And if you're wondering which one's lost, I believe it was Butler, Xavier, and I want to say Providence. Those are the three that lost and everything in that space. But I'm a proud graduate of Marquette. Our star guard has been suffering from an injury that I wasn't even all that aware of. So if anybody is a doctor and knows what a obelisk injury is, y'all have to explain it to me. Maybe one of our guests has some medical background and it can explain it to me in all that space. But it does look like he's good to go for the tournament. And if he's good to go for the tournament, we've got some other good players that go on that game with him. So maybe we've got a chance to make some sort of run because we did make it to the championship game of the Big East and we were playing good for the first half. I say most of the second half, but then we ran out of gas and I think we lost by like 16 points. But with Tyler Kolek coming back, maybe there's a chance that we can win again and all in that space. So we'll see if that happens or it doesn't, but we are the number 2 seed going up against Western Kentucky. Connecticut is the number one seed, and I believe they're the number one seed overall. And of course, folks are still shocked here in the Raleigh-Durham area that North Carolina State, which stood no chance of getting to the tournament unless they did what they did, which is win the ACC. So they won 5 games in 5 days, and they knocked off Virginia, Duke, and UNC. And they will be in the tournament, and nobody saw that coming. And like I've said on some of my social media posts, if they did, I need them to give me the lottery tickets because I need to find out their secrets knowing these things, because that was not in anybody's forecast that I was aware of, including some people that are friends of mine that work in North Carolina State. But they managed to pull that off, and who knows, maybe they'll have some other shockers, because there are always shockers in the tournament. There haven't been a shocker in North Carolina State since the Jimmy Valvano days, but who knows, maybe they'll manage to pull it off in some kind of way or another. So we're going to see if that is the case or not the case, but it'll be interesting. But like I said, Connecticut is a favorite to repeat. There's some bad news for those folks that are Duke graduates, and I actually don't live that far from Duke, and I've got some relatives that are Duke graduates. But the former president, Barack Obama, has already put in his picks. He's picked out who he thinks is going to be the winner. There's no perfect bracket. There hasn't been a perfect bracket ever picked. I think it's like a 1 in some crazy amount of billions chance to get the perfect bracket and everything. But he has said that it's going to be Connecticut against I want to say he put it against Kentucky, and Connecticut will repeat, according to former President Barack. But he has Duke getting eliminated, and I think they were eliminated like in the second round or something like that. But UNC, I think, makes it to the Elite Eight. So in terms of folks that are thinking about it and what the president is saying, because apparently he's had a pretty good track record with these predictions. I'm going to see if my guests have done any of this prediction as well. So I'm going to start with my first guest, who has definitely got his own show, his own podcast. He talks a lot of junk and all in that kind of stuff. So I've got John Smits and all in that way. So I've got to ask you, one, did you do a tournament bracket? Because I have not got around to mine. I never do the 68, but now that we're down to 64, and I still got till technically Thursday to get them all in, I think, or maybe it's tomorrow. I might try to still get my bracket together and everything. But as of now, I have not put it together anything, but I do know that I've even done it for company pools and all along those lines. So have you bothered to get a bracket together, or is this something that you tried
I did do that. And I did 2 of them. I did one that's the dream team, and I did one that is another one that has UConn winning the whole thing. Let's see, I got UConn against Baylor, and then I got Houston against Kansas, and then I got the winner is UConn 78-73. And then I picked another one. Let me see if I can figure it out here, because it's like so hard to figure this stuff out. There's a bracket challenge. So then I did one that was like got three seeds that are in the Final Four. So I have Illinois against Baylor. Oh, and then I got Houston against Creighton. So hey, you just never know. It seems like the number ones don't make it that much anymore. So that's what I have no idea. I mean, I was totally pushing buttons and thinking, oh, well, I like the name of that team. So that's how I do it.
Maybe I'll do that, because I know some people that have done well by picking colors and all along those lines. Before I get to the other guests, we were talking earlier about this and everything, and I've got to ask you about it, because I do remember that when I was a youngster, I ran track, as I was telling you, and I was not good at running track and everything in that space. As a matter of fact, I was very bad, even though I had aspirations of being an Olympic runner, maybe in a marathon type, because I ran the mile, but I used to envision doing like this long distance running. Never happened. And now I've gained some additional weight, not exorbitant amount, but enough that I'm out of shape and probably would not do good even in the senior games. But maybe I'll change that at some point or another and everything. But you were talking about your success, but I was so bad that in my senior year, because I was a good recruiter, a good networker, even during those times. So I recruited people to be on the team, and we won 3 out of, because you could play in your 9th grade in the rural town that I grew up in and everything. So you could do 9th grade, even though that was your junior high year. And then, of course, the regular 10 through 12 for high school. So I recruited people that would help us win a conference championship, some that went on to state titles, and a couple that even played college ball. I think one of them might have even played professional ball and everything. But that being said, my senior year, I was frustrated, and I recruited a friend of mine who has passed many years ago that I knew I could beat, because he was much heavier than I was and everything. And it probably cost us the championship. And like I told you before, part of the reason of wanting to join the track team is because as a youngster, I was the crush kid. I had crushes, still have crushes even to this day, and everything. And there was a couple of young ladies that were on the cheerleading squad, but they were also scorekeepers. And I figured that if I wanted to get close to them, why not run track since they were scorekeepers? And if nothing else, I could look at them because I was a shy kind of kid, so I wasn't going to necessarily talk to them, but at least I could
Yes.
go there and get a good look at them and all in that space.
I joined the gymnastics team for that reason, and I was probably about the same paralysis as your track running. I was tall, and I could do the vault. I could do that where you run down a springboard and do the vault. That's about all I could do. I remember I got into the sectionals, but the track, I was actually a sprinter, so I was generally the only white guy on that part of the team. So, but then later, I've run the New York Marathon in 3 hours, and I did some of that stuff. But when I turned about 48, as you say, your knees start hurting and all that. I started racing bikes. I started riding, and they said, "Hey, you're pretty fast." So I've won like a lot of bike races, and I've had some crashes too. I got a broken collarbone to show for it, but it's bike racing's hard. I mean, it's a hard sport and it's painful. If you like
hard
pain,
and painful, and I mentioned Warrenton, that was the town that I grew up in, and it's no longer around. But there was a hardware store, and Mr. Lanier that ran the hardware store used to travel on his bike, and there are others that have done it as well. But he would go on these long bike rides. I want to say to like Florida and maybe even cross states and everything. And this would have been in the late 70s. And I'm going like, one, you're running a hardware store, and two, you got a lot of gumption going on these multiple state rides and everything during that particular time of our existence. But I'm going like, he was I don't know if he's even still alive, probably isn't, but he definitely got around. I want to say he even traveled as far as going out west, maybe toward Texas and California, but I know he definitely drove down to Florida on a couple of rides. So from North Carolina to Florida, because we were talking earlier, you did not realize how big of a state North Carolina is and how diverse it is. One of the things I like to say about North Carolina is that we are the state that gave you the two Jessies. We gave you both Jesse Helms and Jesse Jackson, which you talk about a great contrast. That is definitely a contrast. And we also give you
that is well, and there is a race called Ram Ride Across America, where you start and you. I mean, it's serious ride, and then you got the Rag Ride, which is right across Illinois, Raggy, I think it's called, and I mean Iowa, right across Iowa. It takes about 4 days. It's sort of a camping riding type of deal, and then there's some other from North Carolina, South Carolina down to Florida that you can ride. So there's a little culture out there of these people that ride that. It's like, I think the most I've ever ridden was 124 miles one time, and the rest of it's pretty much, I've done some 100-mile rides. And
John, I gotta ask you, I would mention, and I like the contrast because you had mentioned earlier. Yeah, we do have a very contrasting state, not just politically, because we have both liberally progressive as well as those that are ultra conservative and everything. So we also gave you Terry Sanford and now Mark Robinson. So we've definitely given a wide contrast of viewpoints, but we also are the state that has the Outer Banks, the mountains, and a number of other things. Charlotte, the Research Triangle Park. So there are a lot of contrasting styles, even Asheville, which I think you told me you have visited or all along.
We went to a timber frame convention there, and I actually bought a lot of old door locks in one of the shops downtown at Asheville. And then we've been to Greenville. And then that's got a really cool lodge there with, it's just a lot of cool stuff in that area. But I've been to Outer Banks. We took the kids to Outer Banks, and we went on the hill where they did the airplanes. And I would say that there's a lot of upper East Coast people that come to the Outer Banks. I don't there. And honestly, I'm from Indiana. We say hi y'all to everybody. How your mom and them. We say all that stuff. And those folks from New Jersey, they don't smile a lot, I noticed. I don't know if that's just me noticing that, but it's like you say hi to them and they just like, so I don't know. Maybe it's just was I was there during New Jersey hate this
before we get ready to bring in our other guests and everything. But one of the things I was curious about, because you mentioned being from Indiana, and there's the whole argument as to which is better in basketball and who has the better history in basketball, because Indiana did produce Bobby Knight and a number of other great players. And of course, North Carolina has Michael Jordan and both UNC and Duke. So that has always been a debate back and forth between Indiana and North Carolina.
We got the Larry Bird. Jordan may be in the best basketball player ever. I mean, you hear about LeBron. Oh, come on. LeBron's a little boring. I'm sorry. He might have a bunch of points. He's been playing forever, but Michael Jordan was the GOAT. I'm sorry. And then Larry Bird was the best trash talking, backing up, clutch kind of shooter, just not the most physical guy. I mean, Michael Jordan was physical. I mean, that dude was physical. And, he's
But
about these guys are our age,
no, but John, we got another player that's a little bit older. Unfortunately, there is a woman player that broke his record and everything, and he did not even play in North Carolina. But if you go to Raleigh, you will notice that is where Pistol Pete Maravich played, and all along those lines. And Caitlin Clark just set and broke his record. So that just happened recently. That record has stood forever, and now it has been shattered by Caitlin Clark. But Caitlin Clark has the advantage.
And guess who's got the number one pick in the WNBA? That beats your Indiana Fever. So we're going to be getting her, and it's going to be awesome. So when she broke that record from like downtown, it wasn't like a swish. It just like hit the back and boom, like statement. But people arguing about Pistol Pete and this and that. But I mean, he was one of the best floor generals shooter. I mean, he was a player. But we've got people like Oscar Robinson from here. We got our old Pacers from the late 60s. I remember when I was a kid, we'd go watch the Pacers at the fairgrounds, and they had George McGinnis and all these great players. So we've had we have a steep thing. One quick Bobby Knight story. So he used to do a golf show with Sam Carmichael, another golf course owner here. And they were over at the Legends Golf Course. We were playing behind them, and we kept hitting into them. Finally, Bobby Knight turned around. I think he hit the ball back and said, "Did you SOBs hitting us one more time? I'm going to come back there and blah, 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 blah." We said, "Okay, sir. No problem. We won't do it again." So he was definitely a character, Bobby Knight. And
well, speaking of being characters, I'm bringing one of our other characters. I do have to tell you, as I bring in Jared and everything, that I did learn, and this was many years ago, because I've done event planning in addition to being involved with media for a while. And a friend of mine was actually doing a golf tournament. It was actually a gentleman that was played at Duke and was having spinal injuries, stuff going on. So Maurice Spencer had put together this golf tournament, and my friend Sheila Anderson had got me involved in it as well. So we helped organize that particular golf tournament, because I've done everything from golf tournaments to music festivals to definitely even did a St. Pat's Parade 1 year. Might have even done it 2 years, but definitely that was in Raleigh and everything. But I did the golf course, and Jared and John, one thing that I learned is that if you're going to do a golf event, it's fun. But one, it's a lot of work to organize any golf event, because it's a lot of moving parts. You got to do all of this kind of organizing, getting the people together, getting the combinations together and everything. But of course, there's going to be an after party. And I, in all my brilliance, because I know a lot of performers, if I had been smart, I would have got one of my jazz band friends, one of my blues band friends, or a number of other people, friends, to come to this fundraiser and everything. But no, I wasn't that smart. I went and got somebody that was in the area of children's theater. So I brought this kind of like children's theater group to come and do a performance. And so that didn't go over that well, even though it was a bunch of professor types. I think it was like Duke Hospital folks and everything, but they were not expecting that kind of performance. So I don't think I got kind of like rags for bringing the children's theater group into that particular setting. I should have done a better job, but I've learned a lot since that time, and I would not make that mistake again and everything. So you got to know your audience. That is one of the things that I know that even Jared thinks about in some of the work that he does. You got to know your audience. And apparently I didn't know my audience, because I tried to bring a children's theater group to a fundraising event. So didn't go over that well, even though they tried. I will give them credit. They went ahead and did their performance. They gave their best that they could do, and they didn't let the fact that the audience wasn't really feel them stop them from doing their performance. So they were sticking into the game.
We've all been guilty of saying or doing the wrong thing in front of the wrong people. It's definitely a live and learn sort of experience.
No, it was definitely a live and learn experience. There's no doubt about that and everything. And I do have Catherine. I think one of the other, Samantha, and the other person, I got to reach back out to them because they popped in, and hopefully they'll pop back in a second and everything. But when I was talking to John before you came on, Jared, he was telling me about his parents and all along those lines. And we were talking about running. So I was just wondering how the discipline went with you, because he was telling me that I think that because she knew that he was a track runner, his parents would get him to run for just about anything. So like if you need to go get the mail, they time you to go get the mail and come back and all in that space. I did not have that experience. If anything, I was trying to, do that whole thing of, well, not so much me, but my younger brother and others might have been doing that. We're going to run away because we had like a long driveway. You got halfway down the driveway, and you're like, no, I'm not going anywhere. So you turn right back around and all in that space. But I was wondering what challenges you had as a youth from your parents, the way that John was being challenged by his
now
mom.
clarification, mine was from ADHD, Jared, because that's,
You know what's funny? I actually, I would say I also had ADHD as a kid, but I would say my experience was actually backwards of yours. So my biggest problem was that I was just a pain in the butt when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the easiest way to say it. But I would say there were a lot of things that I was good at, but I hated practicing any of them. So for me, it's funny because like if you looked at my resume, what I'm saying out loud does not line up with my resume. But a lot of the stuff I've done in my coaching has actually been like telling people that are, between the ages of like 16 and 22, like, do me a favor and do not do what I did when I was your age.
Oh, no, let them suffer.
Yeah. Well, you still got to learn a little bit by doing, but I would say my run, it's on the subject of running. My cool accomplishments definitely happened more in my 20s than in my teens. In my teens, it was my parents trying to figure out like, how do we motivate him to do something besides hang out with his friends and kind of only do half effort on his homework. And, my story is that I picked it up really, really late. I had legit like an intervention with a guidance counselor in my high school halfway through my sophomore year of high school. And she was like, what do you want to do? It's like, I want to be a sports broadcaster. And she's like, okay. She pulled up a list of all these other people in sports broadcasting. And she's like, what do all these people have? I was like, 4-year degrees. And she's like, yep. So you're going to have to figure out a way to go to college. And I just, like, my parents joke to this day because like among my relatives, they were always like, what did you do to get him going? And my parents to this day will joke like nothing. He just
told him I can't.
Like one day he kind of just realized he was going to have to do it and he did it. And then of course, John, I'm sure you can relate to this experience. Once you start doing something and really applying yourself and you experience a little bit of growth, you get addicted to that feeling. So I'm sure that was running for you.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
just really quickly, Jared, I have to ask you this, and I've got Samantha with us as well to be joined. But I mentioned to John, and this is the time of March Madness and everything, and John literally gave us his picks and everything. But have you done a basketball pool as of yet? Because I have not done mine, and I've got a few hours to get it together and everything. But have you done one? And who do you have winning? I'm hoping that my Marquette Golden Eagles will do something this year. Last year they got eliminated in the second round, and hopefully they'll go further than the second round this time. But like I said earlier, our star guard was out for 6 games, and they're expecting him to come back in and start playing and get integrated into the system and everything. But what is your take, and have you done a pick, or have you stayed away from that?
So I'm going to give you a half answer. My women's bracket is done. My men's bracket is not. It's funny to hear you guys mention Caitlin Clark. I have been locked in on the women's side. And that's kind of my background. My most recent thing was coaching at the scholarship level for women's D1. So I am really eager to see what this looks like. There's a lot of really cool storyline on the women's side. I'll briefly say, I think Alabama, where they're seated on the men's side, can surprise some people. I do think it's UConn's to lose, although Hurley is wild. And it's wild to just kind of watch, I think, the evolution. Like every 10 years or so, it seems like there's a new like bad guy in men's coaching. And, there's no Coach K. That was the easiest target forever. It was so easy to just hate Duke. But now I wonder if Hurley's trying to just take that mantle at UConn and run with it. But on the women's side, I will say a couple of exciting storylines to look out for. This is the first March Madness ever where the Ivy League has 2 teams in. Ivy League has emerged as actually one of the best mid-major women's conferences. So Princeton and Columbia are both really good. Columbia actually plays tonight against Vanderbilt in one of the 68 seeding games. So there are both 12 seeds that are going to duke it out. Princeton's a 9 seed, so it'll be really fun to see them go. My last coaching gig was at Canisius, so I'm definitely eager to see how our conference champion does. That's Fairfield. Fairfield went 30-1 on the year. Coincidentally, their only loss was a 3-point loss to Vanderbilt. They ran the table since that loss, and they're playing Indiana. That will be a really cool game.
That Indiana's going to beat them.
Yeah, and there's
I'm telling
actually
you watch out for them Hoosiers.
Yeah.
They're sneaky.
Yep. Well, and another actually a fun storyline. There's a local kid originally from our area who is a huge commit that just signed to play at Indiana next year. Sydney Fenn, like a unbelievably versatile power forward that has like power 5 size and athleticism, but can also like drill threes and has great footwork. So very excited to see.
Hey, Jerry, just really quickly before we bring in Samantha and get into some of the life discussions as well. But one thing that I was curious about is I think that on the women's side, there is the possibility of a, and it's a long shot because the other team has to do some work, but isn't there the possibility of a South Carolina and North Carolina matchup? I think that if I looked at it correctly, there is that possibility that exists.
Bracket, it is possible according to the bracket. I would say North Carolina faces way fiercer obstacles than South Carolina. South Carolina is definitely the team to beat on the women's side. They're the last team left with an undefeated season. They're definitely battle tested. It is possible for North Carolina to make it.
Hey, Jared, where are you calling in from? Where do you live?
I'm currently in Buffalo, New York. It snowed yesterday.
So
it is not springtime here.
We had snow the other day too. I'm, Indiana. You'd be surprised how many people from the East Coast go to IU. It is a lot of Jewish people from the East Coast.
You know what's funny? I'm seeing more of that migration. I heard you guys talking a little bit about some of that East Coast trepidation. You talked about going to the Outer Banks. That's why I found my way in Buffalo. I'm originally a Metropolitan, and I never understood why when I stopped and asked people how they were doing, they just stared blankly at me.
It's like,
the further
what do you want?
west I go, the more I avoid that. So it's been
but it's interesting you said that, Jared, and then I'm going to bring in Samantha and everything. But it's interesting you said that because when I was younger and much younger and everything, my cousin, who is a Duke graduate and is a Army graduate now, because he definitely had a illustrious career in the military and is now doing some of that consulting work that people do after they leave the military. He's actually working on warp technology along with a friend of his that is in that business, because I think he's the CFO, and the gentleman that he's working with is the CEO and the kind of developer of this warp technology and all in that space. But I remember when I first went to New York, I've always been a fan of going to cultural places. And of course, New York, like Miami and places like that, have a rich cultural tradition, whether it's art, whether it's plays, whether it's a number of other things. But my cousin at that time was living in Asbury Park, was never one to be part of that same culture that I am and everything. He was more of a sports bar kind of guy, and I'm not knocking that because I will go to a sports bar as well, but that was more of his thing. So I remember telling him that I wanted to go to New York, and he was like, I'm not going to New York because of what you just said. He just had this attitude that New York was a place that was not for him and everything. He liked that more of that New Jersey type of lifestyle and everything. And I was like, well, you ain't got to go. And this was when I was like in my late 20s or early 30s. I'm going, and caught the subway over there and had a great time while I was there. But I do know there's some people that have that kind of dynamic.
I miss the pizza. I miss the bagels. I miss my people. I don't miss the people. My wife and I have found our speed in Buffalo, and Buffalo is kind of this weird hybrid between being a part of New York but being a real Midwest city, and that's definitely my speed.
No, but Buffalo's also had some trouble, because I know y'all had also had some, not to talk on the negative sides, but there was a lot of things around the race relations and things that have gone on with that particular shooting. I think that one of my past guests had mentioned that there was, I think, a museum or historical element that was there being, I think, erected in that area where the place was being done.
In the interest of not turning this into a 3-hour history of Buffalo podcast, I'm going to give you the shortest explanation I can. There is a really interesting history around the city, and I got to kind of see it firsthand because Canisius University is actually located less than a mile away from where that shooting took place. So in real time, our softball team won a conference championship and made it to the NCAA tournament, and less than an hour and a half later, the shooting happened. Wow. And the way that Buffalo has been designed, there's a lot of old school policy in terms of real estate segregation issues kind of built into the city linings. there's a highway system that literally divides part of the city. And a huge initiative from the city actually was that grocery store where that took place was the only grocery store in a huge radius of that part of Buffalo. So I was actually grateful to be a part of an initiative that our basketball team helped with, which was a couple of local churches basically churned out food pantry services to constantly get groceries and items into that community after that happened.
Well, and I can see that, and even that kind of segregation, and not turning overly political, but I've definitely seen that because Durham, where I'm at, is part of the one of the several Black Wall Streets that exist, and part of what happened is that the highways literally destroyed kind of those historical neighborhoods, and it was designed to do that when they tried to put the neighborhoods through these kind of affluent neighborhoods. So there is, and I've heard people even on the political front and urban planning fronts talk about that it is a design structure that has happened not just in the South, but also, like you just said, in the Northeast and a number of other places as well. So I know folks that are in that field that have brought it up.
Yeah, Buffalo. I'm proud. I would definitely say, even though I'm a transplant, I'm a proud Buffalonian. You might see this on television in Bills fandom. You know, anything that's in Buffalo is ours. And I'm proud of the way that the city takes care of its people. I will say that. We got some work to do, but it's been really cool to see the way the city came together after that.
Yeah, I can believe that. And that's what even the other guest was talking about that I had earlier that had mentioned some of the things that they were doing to commemorate that tragedy and everything. I'm going to bring in Samantha, and I've got some questions to ask about work-life balance and everything as well. But Samantha, if you'll share a little bit about yourself, and I didn't actually do that earlier. So John, I know that you've got your own podcast, which is kind of what that whole mouthwash thing is and everything. And Jared, if you'll share a little bit about yourself as well, and then we'll learn about Samantha, and then we'll just continue conversation like we've been doing. But John, I have forgotten to do that earlier. So if you'll tell a little bit about your mouthwash and the whole that whole kind of concept of the show.
Yeah. So what we have is the Mouthwash Show. I ran for office here in Indianapolis, and I realized that I wasn't, the old George Carlin quote, "It's a club and you ain't in it," and I wasn't in it. So
what a great reference.
I wear that one out because I'm an outsider in the Republican Party, which it's not hard to do these days because there's half of them are crazy. But I noticed that the media does not cover. They don't. If you don't have $1 million gazillion, they're not going to cover you. So I decided, well, we'll just start our own media. So I started. I actually started Your Voice, Your Call with another guy. I gave him that show, and he's actually a national show now. And I started this one, Mouthwash. And the way I came up with the name was I was looking for a name, and just about every talk show name is taken. So I just kept working my way to Toothbrush, and I found Mouthwash had everything open: the Gmail, the name, Gary Varvel, a local comic guy, syndicated, drew our logo. I said, "Oh, we'll just call it Mouthwash." And how far can it go? And that was about over 3 years ago. And what we have is I have a libertarian, a Democrat, and a Republican, and I'm the host. I try to stay neutral. I have red and blue shirt of Mouthwash, so I can dress accordingly. And we just talk about local issues that's going on. And, last night we had one of the governor candidates on that's being excluded from the debate stage, along with another Black candidate. And something smells fishy. We got these other white people on there, but the Black people aren't on there. So we had her on, and man, we had a really good show last night talking about it's a club and you ain't in it. And you can catch us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We're on LinkedIn. Just look up Mouthwash Talk Show and it'll pop up. You'll see our little logo. Check it out. A lot of national people. We cover very little national stuff. There's enough Trump Biden crap going on out here. We don't need any more of that. We want to see school boards throwing people out and arresting people. We want to see, the mayor falling down in the canal. We want to see that local stuff go. So that's our stick. People like it. People that come on, they get more than a soundbite. We usually do about an hour show. We have the tinfoil. We have the tinfoil hat moment where we do at the end. And I actually have my wife's colander that I've fashioned into the tinfoil hat. So we try to keep it light, but we talk about, we talk about issues. So
Well,
that's it.
I've got to tell you a couple of things. One is that there is definitely a lot because they sometimes call it the food fight, but that is we have the World Edition here on the Pod TV, which is every Monday through Friday at 10, and we have a little bit of everybody as well because there are definitely some conservative folks and some liberal right folks and everything else. And then there are guests that come on that particular show. But then one of our regular guests, who is definitely a liberal individual, probably even more liberal than I am, and I do consider myself fairly liberal and everything. But Rick Rosner is a current Mensa, because I think once you join Mensa, you're on Mensa forever, and a former Jimmy Kimmel writer. But he also has a show that he does once a week or once a week and a half called, and don't take offense to this, Samantha and everything, but it's called Naked at Night, because literally he is being portrayed and painted in that whole kind of like art things. But the artist, who is Lance Richland, is very conservative. Rick is very liberal, so they debate back and forth while he's being painted and all in that space. And then they have a troubadour that comes on, and then I might come on with some irreverent comments as well. But definitely, it is a quite interesting show that they do once a week called Naked at Night and everything. So that is a show that airs regularly here on Pod TV, so you can find it. And they've been doing it. They were actually doing it as a Facebook group, and then continuing it now on Pod TV since Rick is part of Pod TV and everything. I did have a quick question here, because I want to learn more about Samantha, and I definitely want you to tell about yourself, Jared, as well. But you mentioned it earlier. I think a lot of people are like you. They're frustrated even on the national level, because they're going like, do we have to have these old folks going against each other? I mean, I'm 62, and we got two folks that one that's in his 80s, the other that's pushing near 80, not knocking 80s, because my dad is 83 and still very active as both an artist and a kind of like with his exercise and stuff like that, because he's also a swimmer and all in that space. And mom, not as active, but she still does some consulting with nonprofits and helping our family and everything. And she's in her early 80s. I want to say that mom will be turning 82 this May and everything. But definitely, you can be very active and very cognitive even in your 80s. But I know a lot of people, including some of our young people, are going like, do we have to have this particular rematch? So even though y'all don't talk
it is hard. And I tell people, I said, you know what, that's not really going to affect a lot of me here in Indiana. I tell people, if whatever's going on outside your front window is what you can affect. So we're basically here in Marion County, to talk about the politics real quick. I know we got other stuff to talk about, is we're getting precinct committeemen. And here in Marion County, they have vote anywhere now. Before, the precinct committee man would be in charge of the precincts and getting poll work. Now it's like, not. So our role as precinct committee men, we have 621 precincts in Marion County, Indianapolis, and 400 and some of them are unfilled. And you wonder why the Republicans don't win, other than half their policies suck. They don't win because we don't have a ground game, and we don't have a ground game because people don't want to come in because our policies suck. So what we're doing is we're getting people that look like Marion County. They say, oh, it's a big tent. We want all the minorities to come in, but it's more like a pup tent. I go to these Republican meetings, a bunch of old white people like me going, and I don't, who wants to do that? Nobody. So that's sort of what I think that just resonates through the whole country. I think everybody's at that point where my vote doesn't matter. It's just terrible and blah, blah, blah. So how do we get people more excited? We get them to come on shows like this. We chop it up with people that we don't know.
Exactly.
Until we offend them and they kick me off the show.
We would never do that. Jared, share a little bit about yourself and everything.
Let me start by saying, just because of what the two of you shared, I love the fact that we are welcoming nuanced conversation amongst different people. It's like the thing missing most from common discourse. And weirdly, that's kind of where all my experience is. I recruit young people that have nothing in common and try to unite them to be on a team. So my background's a little different. I'll try to tell my story concisely. I have been coaching women's college basketball for the last 15 years. I'm very lucky to have been taken into the women's basketball space. Once I got there, I realized why it made as much sense as it did. I grew up my parents were divorced. It was me, my mom, and my younger sisters for the most part. I have a great relationship with my dad. He's definitely in the picture, so it's not like that, but I didn't primarily live with him. So I found out very quickly, once I was like 26, and I realized that I never had a male supervisor in any role. And I kind of found myself flourishing better in women's teams. And then I realized that my voice in leadership was more tailored to that type of locker room. So I spent the last 15 years coaching. I had an amazing journey. I got my way into the scholarship level at Division I, working with an amazing head coach, Sahar Nusebe at Canisius University. And then in the spring of 2022, I got COVID really bad. And I had to take a lot of time away from coaching, tried to work through it. And then under the advice of doctors, I've still actually been in recovery from COVID-19. So my pivot, while I'm waiting to return to coaching at full speed, it started as trying to advise some high school kids that were struggling to get noticed. And, I wanted to get those young people recruited. And as I talked to more high school kids and more of their parents, I realized that there were a lot of very common questions and pain points in their recruiting journeys. And I realized that there was a huge information gap, especially this day and age. And it's funny, it's a completely different subject than what you're talking about, John. But that struggle that you're going to in terms of connecting national with local, that's the struggle I'm currently in, trying to connect what college athletics really looks like and what the expectations are of you versus how high school athletes and a lot of their parents think the process works. So I went out this last summer. I did a lot of research, and I accomplished my goal of putting out the first data-backed book about how college coaches actually think in the recruiting process. That book, which is titled Nail the Recruiting Process, comes out at the end of next month. Coincidentally, to tie a bow on my little story, 2 years to the day that I got COVID. So it's my little comeback and revenge story. And that book comes out on April 30th. And I'm really pumped about it. And right now I am working with teams and athletes and just trying to help them better navigate and better understand the process.
Yeah, well, I did have a question for you. Before I get to that question, I know that Samantha is very much involved in this whole notion of stuff in the business community and health community as well. So Samantha, if you'll share a little bit about yourself as well, and then we'll continue with some of these other conversations and everything. Because I had another guest on not that long ago that was in the brain space. And if I remember correctly, you're also in the brain space as well. Because a lot of times we don't think about that part of our health. We're so busy worrying about our physical aspect and all in that space. And sometimes we don't even do a good job in that way. But yeah, that brain, I don't even think we use about 10% of it is what I think doctors say and everything. And so I'd love to hear more of your story as well.
Yeah, I am a board certified music therapist. I specialize in working with the neurodivergent community. So people who are autistic, ADHD, dysgraphia, dyslexia, all those different kinds of things. And then I also host the Every Brain is Different podcast, where we celebrate neurodiversity and give parenting strategies to parents raising neurodivergent kids.
Hey, one of the things I was going to ask you, and then it kind of plays into what we're talking about, is that it was well into my adult years. And I think that even I think it might have been John that mentioned it and everything with his own health and his own journey and everything. But I actually have one of those things that you just mentioned. I sometimes say that, but it wasn't discovered until I'm now in my 60s. I think it was discovered when I was in my late 20s or early 30s. So I got through all of college, including that Marquette education that I was talking about. But it wasn't until after I had graduated high school and college that I was diagnosed with dysgraphia. So yes, I actually have dealt with dysgraphia as well. It's part of the reason that I get around by mass transit and don't necessarily drive and everything, because my sense of left and right is not all that great. And some from my friends, when I've told them that, they're like, neither is mine. And I don't have what you've been diagnosed with and everything. So I just wondered if you could just share a little bit about what dysgraphia is, because like I said, I have that particular situation, and sometimes I'm even confused as to what it is. But if you can share, since you brought it up, what that is all about and all in that space, because like I said, I want to say I was late 20s, like somewhere between 20 when it was diagnosed in my situation.
Yeah, so dysgraphia is the inability to write coherently as a symptom of a neurological condition. So it's just a learning disability, and you're just, like you said, it's difficult to know between left and right. It's difficult to write, different things like that. And so it's just one of the neurological conditions that come up.
Yep, definitely. And like I said, my left and right is not always that great. And yeah, my handwriting, as I used to say, I am still convinced to this day, even when we're talking about education and the background, that I have definitely had some great ideas even as a college kid, but I'm also convinced that some of my professors gave me the grades that they gave me because they were not able to figure out what the heck I was writing. So even though I might have been writing some great things, I think some of the teachers were like, I have no idea what this handwriting is, so it looks like it's relevant, so we're just going to go ahead and give him a B. I don't think they were bold enough to give me an A, but they were like, it looks like he's making some sense, so we're going to go ahead and give him a B. And so I'm pretty sure that that's how I got by, because I was coming up in the day of the Cliff Notes. So anybody that's watching it remembers those Cliff Notes were real fun and all in that space. So you had the little Cliff Note things going on, and even the exams where you had a little notebook and you had to write the whole essay in that little notebook and everything. That was kind of types of things that I was doing. But yeah, I definitely remember that folks were in that space, and I was going like, wait a minute. So
Yeah, and it's not uncommon for people not to get diagnosed with a neurodivergent diagnosis until they're well into adulthood, because like 20 years ago or so, people just weren't diagnosed with that. We were just told, well, you have to deal with that, move on with life, you're fine. And now we're realizing that no, there are these neurological conditions, neurodivergent conditions that we can get help with. And so now they're diagnosing it earlier. And I was just diagnosed with ADHD like last year after I'd been trying to get a diagnosis for 10 years. And so it's just interesting to me that there's a lot of adults that have your same story. Like we went through school, we went through college, and then we get into adulthood and we're like, oh, my coping mechanisms aren't working anymore. So then we go to the doctor and they're like, oh, you have this, condition or disorder. So yeah. I think it's interesting.
This is for everybody.
You were definitely not alone.
No, I know I was not alone, but this is for everybody, because one of my other frustrations is that I have two nephews, and as far as I know, they're doing well. They're definitely into their Oculus set, and yeah, their report cards are good, and I haven't seen any symptoms of them being in that ADHD or anything else in that space. But I also remember, and this was some time back as well, probably like 20, 25 years ago, when I was dating that particular young lady and everything. And her son, who is now well into his adult years and all in that space, was diagnosed with being hyperactive and having ADHD and everything. And he was put on Ritalin. And my whole thing about that is that sometimes I think that we are too quick to over medicate. So I just wanted y'all's thoughts around that, because I think that even in the school system, that in my mind, a lot of kids are hyperactive. I'm not saying that ADHD isn't real. It is very real and everything, but I do sometimes think that we can be too quick to over medicate and to over medicate, particularly when kids are just being kids. But I was wondering y'all's take on that, since it seems like everybody here has dealt with that. So I'll start with you, Jared, but I wanted to hear from
I'll
Samantha.
take a small stab at it. I want to also start by saying, Samantha, even though you are a stranger to me, I'm immediately in your fan club. My wife is a speech pathologist and specializes in working with young neurodivergent kids, particularly non-communicative kids between the ages of 5 and 8. So
I love that. That's amazing.
Love the work you're doing and appreciate you.
Thank you.
I agree, in short, Mark. And what I would say to expand on it a little bit is, let me grab it so I can give you this little piece of evidence. We did this to them.
Yeah.
We did this to them. And the thing, I can tell you this from a recruiting perspective, I see young people fly off the charts now. Like, they move up on recruiting boards when they can sustain eye contact and engage and have meaningful conversations. And we as adults get so mad at young children for not being able to stay focused for long periods of time or struggling in structure. Can you imagine what it must feel like for a 10-year-old to go from this screen in unfiltered amounts of time to a regular classroom? Like
slow motion.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, and I heard Jon Stewart say something interesting in a recent, actually on the subject of nuanced conversations, in a recent cross-party interview, where he said, do you think right now that part of our problem is that we live in a digital world, but our policies move at analog speeds? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the way that I look at something like this, which is, we have kids that want to be playing. Their attention spans have been made even more frenetic by the digital devices we've plopped on them. They didn't ask for them. And I would love to see these young people given more grace, because what I found in my own experience, and I wonder if this is the same for the three of you, is once I found the things that I was deeply passionate about, I was able to lock in on those things regardless of the other diagnoses that, were in my life and in my orbit.
No, I would definitely agree with you on that and everything. But one of the things that I've actually seen it on Instagram, and I kind of agree with it, and it might have even been in one of those social groups that I belong to, and all along those lines, is there, but kind of to what you just said, Jared, is this notion that we've become so digital that sometimes we even ignore what used to be really common and everything. Because I think one or both of you mentioned this notion of the family connection and everything. And I can tell you, because I live not that far from couple of restaurants, and if I go to the restaurant, even if I go to one later on this evening, I will not be surprised if I don't see two folks that are supposed to be there on a date, and hopefully they are there on a date and everything, but they're also there engaged in their social media and in their
they're on their phones.
So you're sitting there going like, wait a minute, y'all got a 3-piece meal going on, and both of you are on your phones talking to whoever else y'all are talking to. So I'm going like, there's no engagement as much as there used to be and everything. So what is your take on that, Samantha? Because like I said, when I saw that thing, because literally it was a young lady and she was sitting in front of what could have been like some major restaurant having a whole meal and everything, but she was also engaged in social media at the same time.
Yeah, social media is super addicting, and people, they don't necessarily want to get on it, but they like feel compelled to get on it because they get that dopamine hit. And it's super fast where you can just scroll and get more and more dopamine. And especially people who are neurodivergent are looking for quick dopamine hits. And so that's why I think they're more into their phone than like a neurotypical person, because that's an easy way to get it. You, Jared, you were saying like once you were passionate about something, you locked into it. That's exactly what people with ADHD do. Like they don't care about the things that they're not interested in, but once they find the thing that they're interested in, they lock in on it and they like hyper focus on it to where nothing else matters. And that's just because that's what's giving them dopamine. And so I think ADHD is kind of a misnomer because it's not attention deficit. It's just what you choose to attend to. And if you're passionate about something, then you're going to attend to it no matter what else is going on. But if you're not passionate about it, then you're like, I don't really care about that, so I'm just not going to pay attention to it, So yeah, that's...
No, I hear you, Samantha, because as you were saying that, I was just thinking to myself about how often people that are ADHD, and I think that I can say this was the case for me as well as others, and don't know that I've ever been diagnosed with that, but definitely been diagnosed with dysgraphia and everything. So no matter what it is that you're diagnosed with, that you become so locked in that a lot of times you don't even pay attention to what else is going on. Because I mean, one of the things we hear about even in the entrepreneur conversation is, and some of them are ADHD as well, is that they're so locked in that literally they don't know that it's about to be midnight and that the day is about to end and you're literally about to go into the next day and everything, and you're not even thinking about some of the basic things that you need to have in your life. Because I know people that have been in the business space and are so focused in that way and everything, and people will come to them and say, so what do you have for dinner? And they're going like, dinner? What's that? I haven't got to that yet because I was so busy being focused on whatever that assignment was. So even the basic things that you need to do in life, and even some of the personal care and some of the household care, you're so focused that you're not paying attention to that. So that's why I'm not surprised when I see actors and some of the famous people that are not the most attention oriented in that sense. They're attention driven on one sense, but not in the totality of their existence. So is that a correct assessment that I am seeing, Samantha? Because I can tell you, even in my own experience, I can tell you that there are so folks that are so driven, then you ask them, about some of the basic things like food, they're going like, I still got to get lunch and dinner. I haven't had any of those meals yet.
Yeah, for sure. That's totally a thing. People get so hyper focused on what brings them, the feel good hormones, the dopamine, that they just don't care about anything else. Like there are some people that just won't eat. They'll forget to eat. That's a common thing with people diagnosed with ADHD. They don't sleep. They don't do hygiene things because they're just focused on what they're doing. And a lot of entrepreneurs, I think I read this thing that the majority of entrepreneurs are neurodivergent because of that, because they're able to hyper focus. And I know that's for me, like people ask me why I work so much. I'm like, because that's what I love to do. Like, that's what brings me the most joy. And they said, well, you need some hobbies. And I said, why? Like, isn't the point of a hobby to bring you joy and help you relax? Like when I'm working, that's my hobby. And it sounds bad, but that's what I choose to hyper focus on.
I'm sorry. I want to ask a question actually, because Samantha just said something really interesting that weirdly makes me think about John's line of work. Can I try to connect some weird dots here? Are you cool with that, Mark?
Yeah, go for it.
So what we're kind of agreeing on is that we can be fiercely passionate about things that really lock in our attention. And we've also talked a little bit about phones. And I've heard John say that he's trying to bring things back more local. And it just made me think about the recent times where, like, I start doom scrolling on YouTube or Instagram, and I'll start getting extreme polarizing political content from either side just thrown at me on the phone while the algorithm learns about me. So I'm wondering if you guys, particularly John, in your instance, as you're trying to move political action more locally, do you see that as a divisive thing where it's like you scroll one button and the dopamine hit you get is like Hillary Clinton slammed by investigation, or the next thing you scroll is Donald Trump slammed by investigation? Like, it seems never ending.
Well, I mean, when you try to walk that line, so here locally we have those type of things. We had an individual that her name was Cassie Jackson, and she would go to these school board meetings, library board meetings in a cheerleader outfit, just act like a raving crazy person. And so, she was very liberal left, and she just looks at me as a conservative, starts giving me a bunch of garbage. Well, I befriend her, and I'm actually doing a show with her where I interview her, and she's calm as a cucumber. But when she gets away from me, she's out there. Her next thing is she's going to bring.
She's nudity. In the wild. Right?
She's going to bring nudity into her next thing. I'm going, oh my gosh! And she went to Columbia, by the way. She talked about Columbia basketball. And she was a swimmer. She's got ADHD that makes me look like a choir church person. I mean, you're like, but it is we get in it, and it keeps driving us to a certain place. I think we get subconsciously, we get driven to a place of this right wing or this left wing. And, we trying to stay centered is hard. So if you're not a Biden fan or a Trump fan, there's not a lot of middle ground.
No,
in trying to find that.
But along the same lanes and everything, and that's where I was going to go with this and everything. But on the other show that I do, which is the radio show with Mark Lee, which is the one on Monday nights, I had the pleasure of talking to a filmmaker. And one of the conversations we have on both the Online Dinner Party and that show, which is my Monday show, is about work-life balance. And I brought him that conversation because he's a filmmaker, literally grew up in the streets of Compton, moved to Houston, got his filmmaking training, and is now doing independent filmmaking and documentary work and everything. And when I talked to him about the work-life balance, that's when we got to this whole conversation of a hobby. He was like, I need a hobby. I don't have one. And then I mentioned the fact that I sometimes will play word games, like I used to do Word with friends, and now I'll do those kind of like you'll see the images and you have to spot the differences kind of games and everything. So I'll do a couple of those kind of games and some of the other ones that can't exist on your phone, to your point, Jared, and everything. But that has become my hobby as of lately. But he was feeling like what you were saying, Samantha, that the job is what he really found a passion for. But when it came to work-life balance, and because I think he's still in the single space, even though he's much younger, maybe in his 50s or something like that. But that's where he was feeling that he was losing in that sense, that he didn't have that going on and everything. So how do you manage that work-life balance? You're probably the youngest of us all here and everything. So how do you manage that work-life balance and everything? Because I was just fascinated when he brought it up. He's like, and this was toward the end of our interview, he's like, I need a hobby. There's no doubt I need a hobby. I don't know what the hobby is, but I need one.
Yeah, so I'm a mom, and my kids force me to they don't force me to spend time with them. Like, I love spending time with my kids, but that is what I do when I'm not working, is I spend time with my kids and we go do activities with them, so they really like going to get frozen yogurt. So we'll go get frozen yogurt, or we'll go for a bike ride, or we'll go to my parents' farm. And so it's my family that I love spending time with almost as much as I love working. So that's what I do. And most of the activities that we do, we really like going in the outdoors. So we go on outdoor adventures and do those kinds of things. So I don't really do a lot by myself. Like, if I have alone time, I will choose to work. But then if we're going to go do something fun, obviously I'm not going to work. I'm going to go do fun things with my family. So that's kind of how I manage that.
That makes a lot of sense. I'd love to hear how John and Jared do as well. We do have one other guest, Pamela, that will be joining us shortly as well. But that being said, I used to be, during the pandemic, a lot of people, speaking of social media brought us back together. And one of the people that I had lost touch with, because he used to be part of the poetry has always been part of the poetry community. He's a haiku champion and also used to work for George Lucas, but he had come to North Carolina a couple of times to do projects with my friend Dasan Ahana, who's our slam champion, our slam team captain. That's the title he has and everything, and the slam coach and the slam creator of our slam team, and all in that space. So IPC, and you can find IPC on Facebook and everything else, is a haiku champion, but he put together this group called the Funky Eye Puppets, which was folks using Clubhouse and doing like voice theater is what it amounted to. And I was part of the voice theater performers in that space, because some were trained actors and there were others like me that had a radio background, and there were others that were totally amateur, and we were all blended together that would bring in his creation to life. And I need to get back in touch with him and see if we can get it back on track, or I know he's probably still got it on track. But one thing he used to talk about all the time was how often we as individuals kind of lose that sense of fun and wonderment that we had as kids. And I think that even Jared kind of alluded to it, and John did. So I was just wondering y'all's thoughts around that, because we get so busy caught in that rush, got to make the dough kind of lifestyle, that we forget that we used to be children and used to do fun children things. So I can tell you that during the roughly year and a half that I was involved with that, I thoroughly enjoyed myself, got to play all kinds of characters that were totally out of the norm for me and everything. But it definitely gave me the sense of having that childlike fun. So I was just wondering, do you think that that's something we don't do enough of, is we get so caught up that we don't do enough of that engagement and reconnecting with our childhoods?
150%. I don't know if any of you are Malcolm Gladwell fans, but there's a specific phrase that he uses in one of his books, which is social courage. And I think that this weird thing happened during the pandemic that I was kind of happy to see, where it's like, okay, we're all going insane in our own little spaces right now. We got to remember kind of what makes us outside of, and again, that's a huge distinction, not what we do, not what we do for work or what we do, but how we actually show up in our relationships, who we are as people. And what I'm seeing a lot with young people, and it's actually something I talk about a lot in the book, is I see a lot of young people where the thing that tends to hold them back the most is actually that lack of social courage. For example, I see young people that maybe they're wide open and they should take the shot because they are wide open, but they will deliberately elect not to take the shot because if the shot misses, the joke's on them. Or people that don't want to take as much of a risk learning how to do something new. This could be something as simple as learning a new skill on the basketball court, trying a new game. Well, what if this game makes me look stupid? And I'm kind of like, I kind of have to catch myself sometimes remembering that I'm like twice the age of the college kids now. Because I'm like, who cares? Who cares if you look stupid? Like, that doesn't matter. And I see a lot of people, and it makes me nervous. I see a lot of younger people kind of robbing themselves of those experiences because they just don't have the social courage to put themselves out there. I am optimistic that we can change that, but I do think it's sometimes the responsibility of the adults. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, just be playful, be curious, explore new things. It's totally okay. And it's as corny as it sounds. When I talk to young athletes, I say to them, like, you got to remember bike riding. Like, you did not learn how to ride a bike without falling. You didn't do that, but now you know how to do it. And when you fell off the bike, like, did someone point at you like a Simpsons character and just go like the whole time, or did someone encourage you to get back on the bike?
But I got to bring it full circle to something else that you're about as well, because you mentioned the athletics, and like I said, I'm here to bring Pamela in as well. But one of the things that I am admiring, but I'm also concerned about, and even something that the network talks about, which is fiscal literacy, because definitely Nick Palvedo, our attorney that is one of the founders of this network, is really big on fiscal literacy. But I am glad that, and even Marquette has some major NIL deals that are a level of these people, including Caitlin, that have these NIL deals. But sometimes I am afraid that in some cases, not all cases, they're not being taught enough about what to do with the money that they're making off of the NIL deal.
We just throw it at you. What are you doing with it? Right.
It's like winning the lottery. You can win the lottery, but do you know what you're doing with it after you got the lottery and everything? So that becomes one of my concerns with NIL. So I've always thought that the athletes, particularly college athletes, need to get some sort of compensation, and that's just always been my personal opinion. But I didn't know about this NIL until it came up more recently as the form of compensation. But they were getting compensation even in some of the things that boosters were doing and others didn't doing it. Sometimes they got in trouble for it and everything. But I was just wondering your take about that notion of needing to have at least the education to go with the NIL, because you mentioned the fact that you've worked with folks that are NIL based.
I think John and I are going to find common ground on this one. I think a lot of changes that get made societally get made with the best intentions without any consideration taken into what the impact is going to be.
Right.
I see that in schools. I see that at the collegiate level. I see that in politics. So if I were just to stay on the subject of intent versus impact for a second and kind of walk you through this, the intent is players need to be compensated if they are making huge revenue for the program.
Right.
I don't know why this was the decision that was made, but the NCAA was basically like, we were forced to uphold this, so we're going to uphold it, but we're not going to really outline any rules about how this works. So it's a circus right now.
Mm-hmm.
And what has happened, and the biggest people that are paying the price actually are current high school kids. And I'll explain why in a second, because the money is now different. There's more tampering than there's ever been before. So for example, let's say you play at a lower level and you're good. Well, now a Power 5 school can just offer you money and take you. So it used to be that transferring was, I transfer down or I transfer because I don't like the fit. But now transferring is omnidirectional. So the biggest impact that's being made, if financial literacy is not being taught to the kids by the schools that are compensating them, that's obviously hugely problematic. But the other thing is, last year, 20% of men's and women's Division I basketball was in the transfer portal. So 20% of eligible basketball players transferred. That's 20% fewer high school kids getting recruited to play college sports. So there are a lot of problems that I do think are going to get solved in the next few years. I do think NIL is here to stay. To your original point, none of that replaces a degree. The NIL money, especially if you don't know how to manage it, is not going to last, and you're going to need to fall back on something. It's hard, especially just because most of my work has been at smaller higher ed institutions, so I understand how the budgeting works. Like, if the colleges cannot compensate these kids directly, I understand that, because it would be asinine for a college to specifically pay one kid $1 million while the other kid's student activity that they were deeply passionate about got canceled to make up for that payment. So I understand that. But I think the next step is sterner legislation around what benchmarks the money is coming like to and from, and what the actual merits of earning that money is. Last fact, because I'm rambling and I want to hear from you guys because you're way more interesting than me. But one of the original people that was actually calling for NIL legislation is Ramogi Huma. He runs a union called the National College Players Association. And interestingly, the thing that they wanted was lockboxed funds that you could access based on the quality of your academic performance. So the actual original thing that was being asked for was incentivize them for doing well in school. They do well in school. They earn the money that, comes off their name, image, and likeness. And essentially the NCAA was, I think they kind of want to see it get blown up to cause controversy so they can kind of swoop in and make new legislation, like break it to show that it's broken sort of thing. But it's very interesting to see this play out because it is not what the original organizers asked for.
Hey, along those same lines and everything, and just really quickly, and this is another group of people, and Samantha may have some thoughts around this as well. Just quickly, one of the things that I am proud of, not just as an alumni, but in watching one of the games that Marquette played, I think that we have one of the highest GPAs of any of the players and everything. So that is something, whether it's Oso, who I think is close to a 4.0 student, or Tyler, who is also doing quite well. So it's good to see student athletes that are actually concentrated on their academics while also getting a degree. And I don't think that they're just getting it in basket weaving. Not that there's not people that don't do that and everything, but they're actually getting some legitimate courses. So that's something I was proud of when they mentioned that at one of the games that I was watching of my alma mater and everything, and they were like, yeah, I think the average is like 3.75. So they're all close to 4.0 students and everything. So they're doing quite well. But as I'm getting to bring in Pamela and everything, one of the things I was curious about is the other part of that people get frustrated is, even with the NIL, and maybe you've got some thoughts around this, Samantha, and maybe even Pamela, is that while the athletes are getting paid and they definitely need to get paid, there is a big push with our teachers. We saw it during the pandemic. We saw it with a number of other folks as well and everything, because definitely I've got two close friends of mine, one that ran a major drama program at Hillside High, which is one of our high schools here in Durham, formerly started off as an exclusively African-American school, and now it's probably majority African-American, even though it does have more of an integrated kind of student body and all in that space. But he took his students to places like Japan, Australia, and a number of other folks, and he just recently got elected to the school board. And another friend of mine who works at I believe it's a charter school, if I remember correctly, she will be joining the school board now. And I know one of the things they'll be trying to push to support, but as my friend who is actually the husband of Joy Harrell, who's the other school board member, Wendell Tabb is the person that taught and everything, brought up is that they can't actually do the payment scale. They can recommend it, but it's actually the city itself that's got to come up with the money to pay these teachers and all along those lines and everything. So I was just wondering, are we doing enough to deal with paying our teachers as well? Samantha?
Well, I think that teachers and therapists and a lot of people that work with kids are severely underpaid for what they do. But I like it, there you have to fit it all within a budget, but maybe that could come from other things. There's a lot of jobs that are underpaid, And so I know from my music therapist, like I have a team of music therapists and I want to pay them more, but we're reimbursed by Medicaid from the state, and there's only so much they'll reimburse. So what are you supposed to do? Like, you can't keep good staff, or staff don't want to stay in that field because they don't want to be, underpaid their whole life. And so I think it's definitely a problem for teachers and the therapists that work in schools, the therapists that work with kids and the neurodivergent community and all of that. It's definitely something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Just really quickly, and I did see your note, Jared, and everything, so there's a way that I'll pivot that as well. But just really quickly, Samantha, and then I want to learn more about Pamela as well. Do you think that we give enough support to the notion of music as being important and everything? Because I've got, as I mentioned a couple of times during this show, a number of friends that are musicians of all sorts, everything from rock and roll to R&B and jazz to blues, and a number of other musical styles, including some that are a little less known. Like I have some friends in the klezmer field as well as polka and a number of other things. And I do know that music and just creative arts in general can help in the development of critical thinking. And I don't think that it is given enough credit in that sense. But I was just wondering, do you think that we do enough to understand the importance of the creative arts?
Definitely not. 100% definitely not. I think a lot of the focus is on, math and reading, which it should. Definitely we should teach math and reading, but music and the creative arts can help with that. Music and creative arts can help with emotional regulation, which I feel like we're seeing an uptick in kids who are not able to self-regulate, and people in general who are not able to self-regulate when they have problems in their life. And so, music can facilitate communication when you can't verbally express something. It can teach different emotions. It can create a creative outlet for you, like for if you need something to do to calm down. And it can also help you in brain development. And music activates more of the brain than any other stimulus, so it can repair new neural networks, and it does so many things that I could talk for a while. But we definitely need to focus on having music back in schools and allowing kids to access it.
No, I definitely agree with you on that and everything. Pamela, if you share a little bit about yourself, because like I said, that's the way the dinner party works. We all just kind of come together and bring these common conversations and all along those lines. And by the way, I didn't get to Samantha. I did get to the two guys, and I am not one of those people that believes, because my parents, both my mama and my dad, created this radio station, and I've got many friends that are women that are great entrepreneurs and all along those lines. So I don't never want to be accused of being sexist. So I did ask the guys their views on the NCAA tournament and whether they had done brackets. And I do know that some of the women can do even better in the brackets than some of the guys can and everything. So I've got to ask Samantha, have you done a bracket, and whether Pamela has done a bracket as we learn more about Pamela. So I don't know if you've done one of those lovely basketball brackets, because I've seen some women that have literally, I know when we used to do fantasy football. There was a couple of times that women just kind of like ran me all over the place in terms of beating me in fantasy football. So I didn't know if you had done a bracket as of yet. Samantha, and then I want to learn more about her.
Yeah, I have not done a bracket. The only basketball I pay attention to is Utah State and the Mountain West Division, because that's where I went to school and that's where I live. Like, I live in Idaho, but yeah, that's the only and Caitlin Clark, I am rooting for her. So I like her.
The dopest indoor seating arrangement, arguably in basketball, is the gym of Utah State.
Utah State is amazing. And the fans, oh my gosh, when I was going to school there, BYU wouldn't come play in our facility because we were too mean to them and because we were too loud. And they said it wasn't fair. So we had to travel to Salt Lake so both teams could play each other. It was ridiculous.
Well,
yeah.
Speaking of ridiculous, and I definitely want to learn more about Pamela as well. And I know you've got to exit shortly, Jared, and I'll find a way that we can exit, because that's what happens in the dinner party and everything. But before I get to Pamela, I will say that some of the names, well, two things. One, I've been watching this commercial that has totally had me cracking up and everything. And I forget what the product is, but it's the one where the pigeons are complaining because all of the sports teams or all the birds are getting really cool names. So it's like the commercial is the fact that there is like Cardinals and there's Orioles and there's Eagles, and the pitchers are like, why don't we have a team, and everything along those lines. So I forget what the product is for, but I just cracked up when I saw that commercial. And then yesterday I was watching the game and the team actually won, but their mascot is the Raging Anteaters or something like that. So I was going like, this is just kind of a weird name for a team, because usually they have like really cool names. So I don't know if you're familiar with that one, Jared, but I'm going like, I don't know who y'all are, but the Raging Anteaters, I'm already kind of thrown off by the name of the team. But Pamela, just really quickly, and then we'll get to Jared's exit, because there's a way that I get everybody to exit and everything. But to share a little bit about yourself, because part of the dinner party is us kind of sharing each other's lives, what we're all about, and learning about each other. So it's your turn, Pamela, to be on kind of like semi-hot seat, but it's not really that much hot seat. Learning about each other and what we're all about. So Pamela, tell us a little bit about yourself. We don't hear you, so I don't know if the mic's not working or what. Because yeah. You might have to go out and back in and everything, because I know that sometimes, because I did not hear you when you spoke earlier. So you want to say something again? Still don't hear you. So I don't know if you want to adjust the mic in the settings and all along those lines, but I know sometimes you have to go out and then come back in, because I do know that that's happened on some past people. So try that and we'll see whether that works and everything. And I did hear what you saw as well, Samantha. But one of the things I do regularly, Jared, is me and John wait for hopefully Pamela to come back in and get her mics and everything adjusted, is part of what I do on these shows is everybody that comes in and out, I give them a chance to spread a message of positivity, because it's kind of like my own mantra and something that I think we need more of in this world. And even to what John was talking about, there's way too much divisiveness. So anything we can do to help spread positivity, I'm all about, and all along those lines. And it is also, if you're able to tell folks how they can reach you and learn more about that lovely book that you referenced earlier as well. So definitely anything that you want to share in that respect, I would love to give you that opportunity. And I know Samantha's got a client, so I'll do something similar with her as well.
Sure.
But
I'll go quick to accommodate Samantha too. Motivational thing. I'll share a bit of my journey, because I just want young people to understand how growth really works in this sort of space. Right now, I am allowed to do any type of work. This includes typing, physical exertion, driving, anything. I have a cap of 4 hours a day from a doctor. So this whole project came together in 6 months of doing 45 minutes of work a day. And I am blown away by how much I was able to accomplish in 45 minutes a day for 6 months. I shouldn't have been, because I look at these incredible young people that I've mentored and seen what they can do from start to finish of a season, committing to themselves, to practice or extra work. I see musicians, to, some of your experience, Samantha, who enter a studio in the demo space and in 45-minute increments, 6 months later, come out with an album. And I'm in awe of what people can accomplish if they actually just commit 45 minutes a day to doing it. So my challenge to anyone that's listening to this out there that wants to be an artist, wants to be an athlete, wants to be anything, but just doesn't know where to start, just commit 1 week, 5 business days, 45 minutes a day. I promise you, you will feel better on day 5 at doing that thing that you did on day 1, and you can become addicted to that feeling, and that can really move you forward.
No.
To find me, I am at Jared the Coach, all one word. I wanted to be a coach named Jared because it was way less egocentric. That was already taken. So I'm Jared the Coach on all social media. Find me there, and you can visit me anytime at nailtherecruitingprocess.com. Mark, thank you so much for having me. John and Samantha, so nice meeting you. Nuanced conversations, the best. I hope to hear from you all soon. Thank you.
Definitely. I would love to have you come back. Before you leave, just really quickly, I did that one out of curiosity, because I mentioned it earlier. I had no idea what an obelisk injury was. I still don't know totally what an obelisk injury is, other than it has to do with the back, I think, and all along those lines. And that's what Tyler was dealing with and everything. So did you have any idea
like
what
a
this
strain
was?
of your lower when you go now, of course, if this is a listening medium, no one's gonna get this. But for your eyes, Mark, when you go like that,
Mm-hmm.
in either direction, it's that.
Yeah.
So
Well,
thank you again for having me.
I appreciate it. And thanks for the clarification. Because like I said, it took him out for 6 games, and hopefully he'll be back for the entirety of the tournament. I'm going like, it looks like you're just doing basic passing. But like you said, that was a basic motion. But yeah, it can hurt if you don't have the conditioning and all along those lines. So definitely, I appreciate you, Samantha. And then, like I said, I'll try to see if Pamela is able to come in later. But I know you've got to deal with your clients. So if you would share a little bit about yourself, your message of positivity, and how you can be reached as well. And like I told Jared, I would love to have you come back as well, because the online dinner party, we sometimes have repeat guests as well. But I've definitely been enjoying the insights that you've been given also.
Well, thank you. I can be found at the Every Brain is Different podcast, where we just celebrate neurodiversity. And that's really my message, is if you are neurodiverse, if you have autism, ADHD, any of those things, really embrace it. And you're not broken. You're not, a burden or anything like that, like people like to say. So just embrace your strengths, and you can do what you want to do. And then if people are interested, in parent coaching that I do or anything like that, you can find me at BoiseMusicTherapyCompany.com or on Instagram at Boise Music Therapy.
Just really quickly, and I appreciate that, and I know you, like I said, got to get out to your client and everything, but what advice would you give to a parent? Like I said, I never had that privilege. I've got my 2 nephews, but if somebody is thinking about becoming a parent, whether it is an older parent, because I was actually having a conversation earlier with some people that are becoming older parents because they chose to become older parents, but that can also have its own risk, because as my friend Jatovi pointed out, some of those older parents run the risk of having children that might have Down syndrome and some of the other kind of ailments as well. But if somebody is able to become a parent, or even a foster parent, because maybe you don't want to have the parent the natural way because of having it later in life, but you want to foster or adopt, but however you get involved with kids, what would your advice be to folks that are in that parent or tutoring space?
Yeah, I would just focus on connection before correction. It's a term in positive discipline. And what it means is just make a connection with the child before correcting them. If they are misbehaving, it's because of there's a reason for it. All behavior is communication. So if they're looking for attention from you, they're really looking for a connection. And so if you can connect with them before you, don't lecture them on what they did wrong, but, teach them, then they're more likely to listen to you, and you'll have a better relationship with them.
I definitely agree with you on that. And just really quickly, how important is the outside? Because I've not been outside. Well, I did go outside briefly, but not outside the way I like to go outside in terms of a walk. But I am a fan of nature, a fan of the animals that are out in nature, and even connecting with them in some form or fashion. But you mentioned earlier that you like to walk with your kids. So how important is that connection to being outside and being to the wild outside, and to even seeing beautiful butterflies? I don't know if they're where you are and everything, or even the deer or some of the other animals. How important is that connection to nature and just animals and life in general?
I think it's extremely important, get outside, get some sunshine, and then it creates opportunities for you to connect with your kids that you don't have to think of things to do, when you're inside. You can go outside, and just opportunities can present themselves more often than just staying inside.
Yep, I definitely agree with you on that and everything. Go see if family is working, but if you got to get to your client, I thoroughly understand. But you are a great guest, as I said, and I hope that I'll be able to get you back and all along those lines. But thanks for being here, and it's been amazing having this conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see you.
Yeah. Can we hear you, Pamela? Still don't hear you. So, like I said, you might have to go all the way out and in because I'm not hearing. Or do you want to check the settings and everything?
Yeah, I'm checking the settings.
There we go.
That was it's a different mic. I apologize for that.
No problem. Share a little bit about yourself, Pamela. We had this great guest and everything, but we still got a few more minutes to go. So, if you share a little bit about yourself as well.
Well, it's
Teach-
such an interesting conversation. Thanks for having me. I'm a Canadian who lives in Mexico, so I don't understand your sports or your politics or your commercials.
So you live in Mexico?
I live in Mexico, yes.
Okay.
So I have grown children, but I own my own business. So I'm always excited to talk about that topic for women in my age group, for sure.
No problem. And along those same lines of things, we do have some women that listen to the show regularly. What first talk about your business journey? And what got you to go from Canada to Mexico? Because you definitely made that trip, and some people are even frustrated by both of those places here in the United States. We were talking about politics earlier, and there are people coming across the border from Canada to the U.S. and Mexico to the U.S. as well. But what made you choose those two?
Hey Mark, before you say that, Pamela, can you go in your settings and push echo reduction because we're getting a really bad feedback from your mic. There you go. That'll work. We'll talk amongst ourselves for a second. Yeah, that's just the lovely stuff of technology. Sometimes it's
Is
good.
that better?
That's much better.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Okay, well, we've got all this tech, but not working. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
So
excited to be here.
Now
So
she froze.
yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? People always, when you go to leave your own country, they're like, what are you doing? And well, I'm 57 years old and I was underemployed or not employed as I had children. And it became very clear that I needed to make more money because I wanted to retire one day or I wanted to just live a better life. So I started the business as a result of that because I knew I could make more. And then I moved to Mexico because it's going to cost me less to live here. So it was really about a choice of having children young and then hitting 40, 42, and the kids are grown and gone. And I'm like, well, I was still buying their socks. I didn't have a financial plan, right? A lot of parents don't have that. And that was a big factor in it. And then, of course, Canada is a little bit cooler. I was from Vancouver, but I was born and raised in the farming community in the middle. So it was a little bit cooler, but it was just time to get to the warmth. And it's just stunning down here. So of course that was another piece of it. But
what
it really
part of
was driven-
Mexico?
So I'm in Mazatlan, which is on the Pacific border,
Pacific, oh, yeah.
coast. Yeah, I'm on the Pacific.
Yeah, I'm actually a mason contractor, and I have Nicaraguans, I have Guatemalans, I
Of
have
course.
people from Veracruz. I've had a couple guys for 20 years from Veracruz. I'm trying to think where the West Coast guys were from. One of the guys I'm still friends with him. He lives down on that side. But yeah, it is cheaper. Costa Rica is the place to go. That's what I've heard. It's like
Well,
expatriate.
I've
They give you your
friends of-
Social Security. You know, you
It's
can
a
pick
big
the
one.
level of temperature. You can go up the mountain, and
Yeah.
so
It's a big one for the Americans for sure. We have a lot of Canadians here in Mazatlan, but the Costa Rica is very much. My husband is also Mexican, so we met in Canada. So of course it made sense to come here. But I was already coming to Mexico way before him, so it was the
just
place I wanted
added
to go.
added bonus.
Yeah, for sure.
The added bonus there and everything. Well, a couple of things. One, I've got some friends that have thought about getting property in Costa Rica. I've actually got a couple of friends, including the network founder, that have found a lot of friendliness in Colombia. So they were big fans of Colombia. And I know some people that have gone to Belize, including a professor friend of mine that actually took some of his students there a few years in a row and everything. And he was really praising the beauty of the country of Belize. And I know that I think it's my cousin goes down to the Dominican Republic as well. And so there's a lot of people that like that area as well. So definitely there are a number of Latin American countries that I know a lot of people are even thinking about going to. I've got another friend that is a musician, even to what Samantha was talking about, and he is from Peru. So he goes back home to Peru quite a bit. And if you want to see some great history, I would definitely urge Peru, because Peru has got all of that Aztec kind of history and all in that space. I did have two quick questions for you, Pamela, and everything.
Yes.
One is, because you mentioned that your husband is Mexican American and all in that
Mexican
space. but-
Canadian.
Mexican Canadian. So
Yeah.
how was it like having, because I noticed that sometimes there was a period of time in the US when it was not that common to have cross-racial or interracial couples and everything. And I don't know how it is in Canada. It's less of a issue now, because even my dad is a long time lady love, because he's been divorced from my mom for a number of years, but he's been with Linda for decades, probably even longer than he was with my mom and everything. But she is Jewish American, so and he is African American. So definitely that is a kind of cross cultural thing, but they get along quite well and definitely love hanging out and enjoying life together and everything. But I just wondered how accepting was it in Canada, that kind of cross cultural kind of relationship.
At the time, we've only been together about 13 years, 14 years now. We just had our anniversary yesterday. But we did come across the racism, of course. It's alive and well in every area of the world. But it wasn't so much for us as a couple. It showed its face more in his work. And being a Mexican, as you know, right, you were employing Mexican people. There's, especially in America, I think more so than Canada, but he did struggle with pay equity and the rights. And of course, being me and all I am, I had to step in. I didn't have to step in. I just stepped in because I was like, this is my country. This is our country. This isn't going to happen. But it was uncomfortable and very challenging, but we had to face quite a bit.
Yep. And along those same lines, what has his thoughts been? Because I know there's been a lot of conversations we've been talking about on our news show around the border and different political views on border control and everything along those lines. So I just wanted his thoughts around that and your own thoughts, because I know that's been a conversation. And there are people that come across the Canadian border as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, my husband, of course, knew more about it. I was oblivious to it, of course. But yes, they're absolutely coming through the border. But I think in America, what I found going into Tijuana, just myself and looking at the fence and different things, and I'm not sure I'm qualified to talk about this other than just as a Caucasian person, but your politics are very different than ours, and I'm not very political at all. I don't even know if I can tell you what a liberal or a conservative is, right? Like, it's just not something I've ever paid
You're not
attention
missing
to.
anything.
No, but it was interesting to watch how free people actually move about in between the two countries and how much is there based on what we see, that, oh, there's a wall and you're not allowed and all of that's actually not true. There's so much. And then the other thing that's really interesting, when I lived in Monterey, which is where my husband's from, and we had to go into immigration there because I'm Canadian, I needed to get my paperwork done. And 99% of the people that are trying to go through your border are not from Mexico.
Mm-mm.
It's not the Mexican people. We're happy here. We love it here. We love our country. Sure, some of us want to come up and work there, but it's all of the other countries coming up. So unfortunately, we're dealing with them too.
Okay.
They're coming into our country, and I say our country because I'm Mexican too now, but they're coming in, and it's just everyone's looking for a better life. And unfortunately, we see America as the best place to go. And you and I, maybe not so much. I was going to say you and I, but I realize I'm not talking to Canadians, but as a Canadian, we realize it's not. Like, the American life is not the best life, nor is the Canadian life really anymore. It used to be much better, but Mexico is actually one of the better places to be.
Well, one of the things that I found interesting, I don't know where Mexico rates in the happiness journey, but actually, I don't know if you know this, John, but I think it was recently, as of maybe yesterday or a couple of days ago, the United States has literally dropped out of the top 20. So we're not even in the top 20 of the happiest places. I think Finland is still number one, but we used to be in the top 20, and now we're not even in the top 20. So
You need to move to Indiana. Move to Indiana. That's where the happiness is. It
Is that
starts
where
there. We're hoarding the market on the happiness, but yeah, I think that we're overworked to try to keep up with the Joneses on a lot of things. And in Indiana, our cost of living is low compared to the East Coast, West Coast thing. It's like people are like, you can buy a house for $300,000. That's crazy. And it's like, we're like, yeah, you can do that here. Now, a lot of people, we have a lot of out-of-state investors that are buying up property and raising rents. And so we've got a little bit of this inflation crunch going on now. And actually, I think in Indianapolis, over 50% of the people are renters. So not homeowners. So there's, housing is an issue, and affordability is an issue. I love it when a politician says affordable housing. That means get your wallet out because it's not affordable. And they don't do anything to make building any cheaper by extra permits, extra red tape, extra things. And you go to Mexico, and it's like, I always say a rich person in Mexico would be a person that has a house with rebar sticking out the top because they're going to put a second floor on someday. And they're like, really? we're really gonna, step it up. And nobody's inspecting their houses. They just live in their house and they build it how they want. It's great to have that kind of freedom.
A lot more.
But then you have the economy drive of a lot of Mexican people do everything for themselves. They don't, here in America, you get your nails done, you get your yard cut, you get your trash taken. We don't hardly do anything for ourselves. And so there's a big difference which makes a lot of markets, for people to charge money and that. But when you do a lot of things yourself.
But John, along those same lines, everything. One of the things I know I brought up on this show and other shows is that there are a number of people that get frustrated, particularly during the COVID pandemic and everything, when they see, even here in Durham, where I'm at, Durham, North Carolina, all these empty buildings, and then you go out on the streets and you see the homeless people, and you're going like, there should be able to convert those buildings in order to put the people in there. And then you also see, as you just said, apartments that are being built. Sometimes those apartments are being built and the rental rates are not all that friendly and everything. And a lot of times they're empty. So I'm going like, you got a homeless problem, because there are definitely people, and maybe not as many as in other parts of the world, but there are folks that are homeless or are struggling and they can't afford the rent. And you see at the same time empty buildings with empty rooms, and you're going like, and even empty office spaces. It's like you can convert those. So I don't understand.
Yeah, that sounds really, really good on paper. I actually serve homeless here in Indianapolis every Sunday at 3 p.m. We have a parking lot, and we have a group come in with a hot meal. We have a little church service. We have another row of tables where you can pick up supplies. And honestly, it's about a third. We have a third of people are just straight up homeless. They come through the line. They're on drugs, whatever, that their hands are probably haven't been washed in months. And we got a middle third of people that probably are 1 foot in, 1 foot out. They're probably sleeping on somebody's couch. They don't really have a place, can't afford food as much. And then we got another third that have a house, but they can't afford food. So they come to this with food. The problem is our city tried to do this thing called housing first.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is they put somebody in a house, they pay their rent, but what happens is they don't let them have their little family. A lot of homeless groups will have 3 or 4 or 5 or even 6 or 7 people in a group. When you take them out of that group and put them in a house by themselves, what could go wrong? So part of the problem is they don't want to follow the rules that it would take to live in those houses, and they just want to live in that way. They say if you're homeless more than 2 weeks, you will probably be homeless for a long time. But the average person that's homeless after 2 weeks are like, I never want to do this again. So it's a very complex issue of.
But John, along those same lines and everything, because I actually was on the bus, because like I said, I get around by mass transit. I mentioned that earlier on this show, and I've said it before on others. But there was a young couple, and I've seen them before, that was riding their bicycle, and they are definitely homeless and might even have some of those drug situations that you were talking about, because I saw them talking to another young couple, and they were both in that similar situation and everything. But if I heard the lady correctly, she was talking about kind of that off the grid lifestyle, because she was talking about a man or her significant other was perfectly willing to go get some bamboo, find some blankets and everything, and pretty much create their own kind of shanty town, or kind of like little tent village and everything. But she was talking about his resourcefulness, and some people might not see that as resourceful, but if you can find a kind of blanket to get yourself warm and some sort of heat and all along those lines, it can be a matter of being resourceful. So like I said, it's not something I would want to do, but I know that folks have had to get in that situation. And she was basically telling this other couple, yeah, we found this spot that I think she said it was like near a bamboo area, because there's some bamboo areas here in North Carolina, and we were going to put this blanket or some other things, and that's where we're going to stay at.
Yeah, you and I do serve with another group on Saturday nights. We go out to the camps, which are in these areas you talk about, and you would be surprised. People would be surprised where people are living under
Right.
Brit. But it's just amazing how many people are living that way, and it just amazes me on how people survive. When we talk about COVID, and we talk about washing your hands and being clean and not breathing on people, we didn't lose any homeless people. It was, and they don't wash their hands. They didn't, some would wear masks, but they'd be so, it just, to me, it was like, there's something about living in that way. It's like dogs drink out of mud puddles. Well, why don't they die? Because they're used to drinking out of mud puddles. So our immune system sort of builds up to different things, especially if you're not living the cleanest life. But it's mental. There's some mental issues, but I really think that a lot of people don't have the discipline to manage their life. They can't go to work every day, and I don't know. Sometimes there is some drug issues that are involved that their chemistry in their brain is to the point where all I care about is getting that fix. It's a culture. It's definitely a culture of you want to get out, and we have had some success stories in the years that I've served, but it's probably one in 50 that turn it around, and then they come back and give a testimony, and how they stay is they help others in that situation. That's the best way for someone to stay straight and clean and out of that situation, is to come back and be held accountable because somebody's relying on you because you've been successful. So it's a tricky. It's not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not for the faint of heart at all. And like you said, there are even some programs here in Durham, because I know the Durham Rescue Mission has done some of that work you're talking about. And there's also a program here that's a rehabilitation program called TROSA. As a matter of fact, I know we're far away from Christmas at this particular part of the year and everything, but they usually help supply the Christmas trees. And if you're moving from point A to point B, like even from from North Carolina, California, they will help you with the move, because that's one of the services that they provide. So they've got TROSA moving, and they also are very much, because as I said earlier, I'm in the event planning space, and I know that a lot of the TROSA members, they have their own band that is performed that does like gospel and R&B covers, but they also will do a lot of the leg work, the grunt and grip kind of work at a festival. So they would do a lot of the trash moving and a lot of the setting of the stages and a number of other things to help that festival run. And they've been doing that for decades. So we always appreciate the work that TROSA does, and they do them for a number of festivals. I know the first one that I'll probably see them at will be in July, even though I might go to Central Park and the Strawberry Festival that I think is coming up in April. But I know definitely in July, I always do the Eno, and they will definitely be at that. So they're a group that does that kind of work that you're talking about. Hey, Pamela, just really quickly, we still got about another 20 minutes to go and everything, but a little bit around that time. But I was just wondering if you could talk about the level up coaching and the level up coaching that you're doing for women, because I know that even one of our founders of this network, Kimberly Calhoun, is a business executive, and she's definitely one that is in that business space. As a matter of fact, right now she's in Houston at CERAWeek, which is a lot of the oil money and oil industry people, but she was a engineer, had some patents that she created, including some around security and policing and all in that space. And she's definitely done some work at North Carolina State as well. But I just wondered if you could talk about the work that you do with women entrepreneurs and what Level Up Coach is.
Sure. Thank you so much. So everyone that I know, including yourselves, but especially women, cannot hit 35, 40 and not have an excellent skill set in something, or knowledge or passion and understanding. So I am an advocate for great things happen when women have money. If we can get more money in the hands of women, we can then, first of all, we don't have safety and security. Some of us still can't get that cab home on a Friday from our friend's house, or purchase enough healthcare, or take care of the things that we need to take care of. So we're sitting with skill sets, and we're sitting with something that can help someone else if we could simply just get it out to where it needs to go to. So first, it's understanding what is it that you know and can do. And I've seen $1 million YouTube channels on teaching people how to crochet. So there's really nothing that we can't monetize. And I help women do that so that they can then make enough money to do what it is that they want to do with their lives. And it could be coming to Mexico, which I've been able to do for myself, or it could be an extra $2,000 a month. And I don't know about you, but $2,000 a month would change my life, right? When I was not too long ago. So it's very, very exciting to be able to take that, and then we bundle it up and we put a bunch of pixels around it, AKA a funnel or a website, and we put it out there and we start talking to people about it and get in front of people who may be able to benefit. But it takes a tremendous amount of courage to do that, right? We don't end up in situations in our lives where we're not making enough money if we feel really good about ourselves and about the world and about money and all of these things. We end up in places, I know I did. I came from a very poor, abusive background, and I didn't think I had anything to offer anyone. And it took time to get that together and pure just desperation. There's no way I was going to go back to work for someone else. I lived overseas in Korea for a little while, and I got a taste of what it was like to make $40 an hour. I'll never forget it. I thought that was life-changing money for me, right? And I came back and I was not going to make $40 an hour back in my own country. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Maybe I could teach English online. And it started this thing that grew and grew and grew. And now I can make money anywhere, anytime, and I live a beautiful life. But you can see it. Like each time I had to level up who I am, what I did, what I believed, and then go and talk to more people. And I had to stop or had to understand that what I have is valuable to people if I just talk to enough people and learn the failure and learn the no and, you know, all those things that you hear about. But we're able to help people make a lot of money. And
That's
it's
good and everything.
very
Hey, Pamela,
exciting.
just really quickly, a couple of things that you said that I was curious about. One is I've on this show and a number of other shows, we've oftentimes, and John might want to jump on this as well, this notion of the inner critic, because I know I'm guilty of it. I was talking earlier about that whole notion around both job opportunities as well as dating opportunities. And I know that I have literally talked myself out of opportunities in all of those categories and everything. So how do you deal with that inner critic? Because I mean, it probably took you some gumption to get with your husband and decide to move from Canada to Mexico and everything. But how do you deal with that inner critic? Because we all have it, and sometimes we can talk ourselves out of some great opportunities.
For sure. It's that voice in my head that I say is disguised as useful. And she is when we are in danger. Our brain kicks in because of the motivational triad. It just always wants to conserve energy. So if I go into my past, which is where it's comfortable, versus where I need to live in the future to build a business and come up with new thinking, new stuff, new energy out here, my brain's like, no, let's go over here. So kicking into entrepreneurship, your brain just automatically goes, you're going to die. So I'm just going to, it's not going to work or whatever. It starts to kick into its familiar default thinking. And we can call it inner critic, we can call it all of those things. But if I realize that I'm out here trying to do something I've never done before, my brain only knows to go back here. So I have to train my brain to do something different. And I'll only do that if I've got a goal big enough, like looking after my family, like making a change in my finances that I have to so I don't end up in a box on the side of the street somewhere, homeless, right? I've got to have something pulling me further out. And it's that. And then it's just a pure, some days, this sucks. Like some days it's amazing, but I'm putting myself out there all the time to do this. And our society also doesn't want me to walk in here and go, hey, bitch, you're wealthy. We're rich. This is the life. We don't. Do you want me walking in? Especially a woman? No, society's going to knock me down too. So I've learned really quickly, don't say anything out loud. So it all starts to happen in here, right? And it's dangerous in here. But society doesn't want us either. My mom always said, like, who do you think you are? The Queen of Sheba? Like, it's a voice. We picked it up from someone else. We didn't come out that way. Society does it. Watch any movie. The rich person or the salespeople are what? The vicious ones. So why would I and my brain go, yeah, let's go towards money? It's automatic going to try to kill itself, right? It's going to try to do that to me. But I am not going to sit at the end of my life and go one day, you know what? I coulda done.
Woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Yeah,
Definitely
I
that.
didn't want the regret. And I also didn't want to look at my husband and my family and go, he's sick. He's got cancer. Just say, for example, he doesn't. And I'm looking at him and I'm going, you know what? Sorry, can't help you. Because this voice is more powerful than what's available to me in the future. What I could do for myself, I could not look him in the eye and go, you know what? I chickened out. I just couldn't do it. I can't do it because I know there's money out there. It's flying everywhere, all day, everywhere. I work in the circles now. I've got myself in a different room and I see money coming all over the place. And
Hey,
we've been able to
Pamela.
capture it. But just because I've got to stop the voice. I've got to do something about the voice because it's just as true as what could possibly. There's not
Pamela,
one
speaking
without.
of that voice and everything, what do you say? Because I know a lot of people, and John might even jump on this as well, have talked about that gender gap and that there are a
Yeah.
number of fields that women are not paid as equally and all in that space. But as you said, there's a number of women that have exceeded their expectation monetarily and everything in that space. So what do you say to the women that are frustrated by the gender pay gap? And is that something that society needs to be concerned about? Because it's not just here, it's around the world.
Society can be concerned about it as much as it wants, right? We have to buy into it. We have to accept it. So now we have options. I was born in rural Saskatchewan on a farm in 1966. There was no internet. I was supposed to marry a farmer. Today is a different story. I have access, and this is why I hope TikTok doesn't get banned, because I have access to anyone, anywhere, about anything, and I can talk to them and I can learn. I didn't have access to information before. I do as a woman today. I'm more powerful today than I've ever been, and look out. We can take this and make money. So what you want to pay me, I'm good. I'm over here. So I have options, but there's a lot of women still out there don't know that this is an option, that I can do this as a side hustle. There's lots of them that do really, really well. And I can sit over here again, 4 hours extra a day or 10 hours extra a day, whatever it's going to take for me to move myself and my family forward. I have that capability. Absolutamente, I do, right? But the possibility is there for me. So that doesn't bother me anymore. That's great. Go for it.
Yep, that makes a lot of
You're
sense.
losing out because you don't get to work with me. You don't, right? But it's, thank God, it's an option for me, because it wasn't when I graduated.
Wow. Hey, there's
And
another.
that's why I was underemployed, unemployed, because childcare, all those things that we dealt with, right? So now I'm 57 and I can't retire because of that. I'm like, not on my watch.
I know that's right. Just really
Right.
quickly, I know there's another word that people oftentimes talk about, and we brought it up on this show as well. Definitely want to hear John's thoughts on this as well. But there's a very powerful word that I sometimes think that we are afraid to use, even though we should use it. And it's only 2 letters, but sometimes we are hesitant to use the word no. I know that there have been opportunities that I've been given where I knew that they were not beneficial to me, and I was talked into doing them because I was saying yes when I should have said no and everything, because you can't live everybody else's dreams and everything, because I know that sometimes people will try to pull you into their dreams and their ambitions, and they're not even your dreams and ambitions. So how do y'all deal with that? Because sometimes you have to use that powerful word no, but sometimes you want to be the people pleasing ability, and you want to be nice to all people and all in that space. So John, I'm sure there have even been times that you wanted to say no and did not say no.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that. I'm the guy that they call to fix anything and at any time, and I always do it. And I don't have a problem with that. But you need to watch the Jim Carrey movie Yes Man. That was a great movie of an example of somebody who said no all the time, but then he was like had that trance put on him. He had to say yes to everything, and sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. But I wanted to talk about the gender pay a little bit. And I mean, you could lump in the $15 an hour, wage control. I would say, and Pamela, what you described is you made value. You made yourself valuable.
Mhm.
And I would tell any young person, anybody, even old people like us, Mark, make yourself valuable.
Valuable.
And my father-in-law was he was a high school graduate. He started work at washing parts at a motor rewinding company, end up being the president of it. Never had a college degree, but he learned, and he was just one of the smartest guys I knew in business. And he was valuable because he worked and he did that stuff. And I've been in meetings with him. He got paid $5,000 for a consulting thing, and he went in there and said about 3 common sense things. And I got out of there. I said, "You got paid for that?"
Yeah.
It make yourself valuable. I'll ask you, can you guess what my real job is? What's my real job? Pamela, you go first.
You
The
mentioned
first
well,
word that came up for me was lawyer.
Okay. Mark.
You mentioned something earlier about construction, so I was thinking it was something that was
Oh yeah, you had
construction
a
based.
construction company.
Yeah, I'm a bricklayer, but I tell people, actually, I'm in construction. I do developer and all that, but I've been 33 years of a masonry contractor in concrete work. But I went to college. I have an undergrad in art, interior design, graphic design, and I have a master's degree in psychology. And I'm still a bricklayer. So I tell people I'm a creative therapist that can put bricks on your house. So that's, but you see, I was always somebody that I wanted to be valuable. I mean, I've had a real estate license. I've done all these different things to fall back on. I didn't want to be a lawyer and have to do lawyer all the time.
But John, and this comes back to even Pamela and everything. How many people, whether it's women or men, because actually a friend of mine who does a Black Business Olympics and everything, so a Black Business Expo, often talks about this notion of you have to know your worth in order to actually get your worth, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, it's you got to be valuable. I mean, you got to have and my father-in-law said niche. You know, they rewound motors, like big motors, and
But I guess my question
not
for both
everybody
you
does that.
is how many of us actually know our worth? I was actually having this conversation with a coworker of mine because I was offered a chance to speak to some young women at Duke. I think it'll be about 10 of them, and they want to know about the history, the African American history in Black Wall Street and how it plays into entrepreneurship and all along those lines. It's a quick hour-long conference and a hour-long conversation that I'll be given, and I'll probably be charging them somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 to 150. And some people might be thinking that that's a little bit way too undervalued and everything. And there's some other people would be like, Mark, that's too much. You need to charge them 25. And there's other people would be like, it should be 500 to 1,000. So a lot of times we don't understand our value, and I'm not even sure that I understand my value all the time. So how much of us actually understand our value? So is that a conversation you have, Pamela, where people have to have a fee structure and don't always know what that fee structure is?
It's one of the biggest conversations we have in the client game. So I'm really good at helping people with clients because I couldn't get clients, and now I can get clients. And one of the things I always tell them is they go like, well, the phrase that you used was my value. Like, I'm worth more than that. And I was like, whoa, that goes without saying. Like, somebody had to teach me really early on in this game that I'm valuable just because I'm here. And the value of what I do for someone else is the value that's created for that it's got nothing to do with me. I just happen to, because the moment I start wrapping me up in what I'm doing for you, it's messy and dirty and it's all going to fall apart. It's the value in the work that I'm doing and who I'm doing it for. If I, as a graphic designer, say, for example, with John, and I do a beautiful poster for the nonprofit down the street versus I do it for Walmart, different pricing. A whole different game, right? But the values
we
in
can
the
see that with
poster.
the music. Yeah, we even see that with the music business because I just mentioned I do festivals, and I know for a fact that it would say, because he's still performing, what a guy would get for playing at a nightclub would be different than what he's going to get for playing at DPAC, which is one of our bigger theater. I think it's like about 2,000 versus what he'll get if he goes to a festival. So the festival is going to be what he's going to get the most at and everything, whether it's a festival in Canada or a festival in Sweden, say, for example, versus what he would get if he's playing at a large theater, which is what the DPAC is, or what he would get if he's playing at some local nightclub. Like, to your point, those are all different prices.
Okay, so one thing we're thinking about our value as individuals.
Mhm.
It's when people can have individuals building your value or your company. You look at somebody like Elon Musk or these big companies. They have Donald Trump. They have a lot of people that work for them. That you provide that that space for them to work, and that's when you really start making money. When I lay bricks, I can lay bricks by myself. I get paid by the brick
Mhm.
for the job. Now, if I do commercial work, it's like you said with your musician in the big stadium, they're going to get more money. But if you're going to a small area, you're not going to get more money. But if I get 4 more guys helping me lay bricks, I get some laborers, I get more bricks laid. And if I do that in the commercial business, then that's when you start realizing that you can expand your talent and your value to others, and then they can bring that in for you. And that's what it takes like 30 years to figure out. So
Speaking of that value really quickly, I know we've only got a few more minutes to go because I can go a little bit over and everything. But speaking of that and all along those lines, how much respect do you get, Pamela? Because I had a friend, she actually did a show here, and she was actually in your field, John. She was a construction lady. She was actually, she got into it through her then husband and everything. So she actually creates and builds some buildings here in North Carolina. Tracy Pinkhammer, because that's her brand name, Mebane and everything. And I think she's originally from New York and everything. But I do know that sometimes when she would, because some of her workers, like you just said, were of Latin American descent, and some of those can have that machismo and everything. So sometimes she had to let them know that she was the boss and not necessarily just the secretary, because she wasn't the secretary. She was literally the boss and everything. So Pamela, even when you're talking to your clients, how much do they have to be a little bit more assertive? Because I know that sometimes both men and women cannot want to be assertive, and they don't always let folks know that they are the boss. And I do know that sometimes women are a little bit quicker to kind of acquiesce, for lack of a better term, and everything. So have you dealt with what Tracy told me she dealt with, which is folks would come and see her coming into the room and thinking that she was the secretary, and she's like, no, I'm the one to cut your checks, and I'm the one that can actually fire you, because I am literally the owner of this company and everything.
Absolutely. I'm in the marketing world and we call it bro marketing. And it's just, you walk in a room and sometimes you just got to turn around, walk right out. It's just not your place. It's not my place. But absolutely, I come up against it every day. And it's fine. My biggest struggle is, do I try to beat them or join them? Because there's such a bro-ish thing going on over here, and it seems to be that that's what works in the world. And that's probably my biggest conversation is, I don't want to sell it that way because that's actually not the way it's done, but that seems to be what people buy. And I choose to come over here, so I may not be as, quote unquote, successful as some of them out front, or appear to be, which we know math is math, right? I know it costs the same for an ad for me as it does for you. Facebook doesn't care what my gender is. It just wants my money, right? So I know that I deal with that all the time. I've been in some rooms with some guys. I'm like, ooh, you scared the shit out of me. And I had to turn around and walk out. Yeah, just such disrespect. I haven't felt like, it was almost like I wasn't even human. It was horrendous. I was just like, wow, yeah. We
You've
still deal with
never,
that.
you've venture capitalists. My wife was, and I'll give you a perfect example of the gender pay. My wife was HR for Napa Ball Camp, large parts distributor. You've heard of them probably, Napa. And she quit and went, she moved on. And the guy that came in, replaced her, made $40K more for that. And, she was treated that way because, she still was making six figures, but it's still the work she was doing, it should have been more. And she went and interviewed for some venture capitalists. And I don't know if you've ever heard of a stress interview.
Mhm.
That's where they make you sit out in the lobby for 20 minutes, 30
Okay.
minutes, 40 minutes. You come in, and then the guy will be talking to you. Then another person will come in and ask you a question, and they ask her this math question, like, what's half of 98? And I mean, this is this stress interview, and they want to see how you react in this stressful environment. So apparently venture capitalism is very, hostile takeover. It's very intense. And she couldn't get out of there quick enough. I mean, I would not want to work for people that Shanghai you on the very first day. That's how that's a good red flag for that. And she hightailed out of there. So I can understand that, Pamela. Now, as a male that's 6'3", that is, I would say I'm more of an alpha male. I come into an area, I'm going to be the leader of it. At some point, I'm going to be leading this outfit. And so I don't know what that's like to have somebody. I've had people try to back me down. I don't know what it's like to be back down, because it's just not going to happen. So I don't have a lens for being a
But
minority.
on
I
the
don't
flip
have
side
a
of that,
lens for that.
John, just on the flip side of that really quickly, because I mentioned before, Kim is the founder of the network, and like I said, she's at the CERAWeek. But I know that sometimes she likes to, and you used the word earlier because you even used it in one of your conversation points, Pam, and everything. But she will sometimes intentionally use the word witch, and some of the word that goes along with
Oh,
witch.
yeah,
Because she's
yeah.
going like,
I'm
I
Canadian.
can definitely reclaim that, and I don't mind being called that and everything, because she even will change what the initials mean and all along those lines, whether it's the witch word or whether it's the word that rhymes with it, it has to do with the female dog and everything. But she will definitely reclaim that conversation. So how much do you find yourself having to be assertive in that way and even reclaim the kind of those words and let folks know that you're not going to back down? Because there is this notion
I
that
think I'm
women will
really
sometimes back down.
fortunate. I think I'm really fortunate working for myself. I have such choice available to me that first it's branding out front, only certain people show up in my world, and then I can say no, right, to clients. And I do all the time, but I try to be as clear in this personality as I am here, so that only certain people will come towards me. Those guys aren't going to come towards me. right? They're not going to be, and if they wouldn't get further than the front door, so to speak. So that's part of it. But in another environment, that's one of the other reasons I got out, is so I could have that choice to be personally safe and secure and to take care of myself and my family. Thank goodness we have the internet and what we've got choices, because it's not safe out there for us in a lot of ways. And we're not taught to negotiate, but we also just don't know, because we haven't been in the corporate world as much as men, and in that we don't even know what those numbers are. We don't even know what's
Right.
available to us, because nobody will talk about money. Our own other women don't want to talk about money. I'll tell you exactly what I make, how much and when, and all of it, because I need you and I to both have an understanding and awareness of what's possible. But we don't know what those numbers are. But the world taught us, don't talk about money. Why not?
Yeah,
It's
because they
not-
don't want to pay you more. That's
they
why.
don't want us to know. So what did
Yeah.
I say about TikTok and being a women getting information? Now I can talk to somebody and go, oh, now I know. But we didn't have that before.
Yeah,
So
and
we
I-
would just
I would-
talk.
I would say one of the things is, and I'm old enough to remember when both parents didn't work. That we had the dad worked, the mom stayed at home.
Yeah.
My mom started working when we were in high schoolish things, and I think since then it's been foot on the gas. Both parents have to work if you want to
Have
keep
to.
up with the Joneses. Both parents have to work. So, to be fair, the women's workplace has not been around that long, and it's very slowly catching up in that. But I'll tell you what, Pamela, I would rather work with the female than I would a male.
Yeah.
A
Well,
lot of times they're more sincere, they're more honest, they're more driven, and they're more organized. Other than that,
John, I can see what you're saying because, like I said, in the arts world that I've been in, I can say that the vast majority of the bosses that I have had been women bosses, and like you said, they are sometimes some of the most effective bosses. Because I know that cultural arts center that I just mentioned earlier, I think there was one executive director that was male in the last most of the years that I worked there. The other 3 or 4 were women leaders in that job and everything. And the majority of the staff, including the CFO, because she's been there forever, has been a woman. And the same with the Arts Council, which has been woman run, because I knew both of the directors, the current one, as well as the one that was her predecessor and everything. So definitely in the arts world, there are a lot of women arts administrators and everything. But I also sometimes wonder if there aren't certain fields that are stereotypically more women driven, and I think the arts might be one of those.
and teachers. I went to Ball State College here in Indiana. It was called the Teachers College before it turned into Ball State University, and they were predominantly females. I mean, that's why when I went to school, there. It was a 4-to-1 ratio of men to women. So that is the mentality. And teachers, they don't get paid as much, and that is catching up a little bit. But here in Indiana, over half of our budget goes to education. So it's not a matter of pay; it's a matter of, I think, structure in that. But that's a whole nother show.
No, John. Speaking of that, as we get ready to wrap up and everything, one of the things I'm going to give you both a chance to answer the thing that I got everybody to do at the end. But at the beginning of the show, you mentioned, and I know you said you weren't into this, Pamela, sports betting in Indiana. As of, I think, about a week or two, we just recently got that in North Carolina. We had already been doing the lottery in terms of the lottery being a way to get education money, because that's what North Carolina did as well. But we just recently got sports betting. So FanDuel just recently came here. I think it was on the 11th or something like that. So it's been about a week and a half, and there's all these commercials talking about that. We haven't done pari-mutuel yet, but that doesn't mean it's not coming and everything. So I just wondered how important was that, because you mentioned some figures. I'm going like, well, if we could get those kind of numbers, those could be some great numbers for North Carolina and everything.
And it will get diluted as more. It's almost like the legalization of marijuana. We're the only state. Everyone around us has legalized marijuana, either medical or full blown. And when we started doing this, the opening the casinos, they made it a riverboat, made it go out and sail in the Ohio, and then they made it say, oh, well, now you got a riverboat, you don't have to go out and sail. Oh, now we can be on the land, and now we have a brand new casino being opened up in Terre Haute, Indiana, and we have like about 8 of them around everywhere. So it's sort of that. Let's put our toe in the water. Let's get our leg in the water. Now we're going to jump in the water. But $1 billion in tax revenue a year in Indiana is contributed to either the lottery, the sports betting is just unbelievable how much that brings in. And then we have the casinos that have paid, and that's just the taxes. So you'd think about how much is really being wagered in this. And it's almost like, okay, and then they use it under the guise we're going to give it to education and we're going to make your, like I said, our license plates cheaper and all that. And then they just keep easing that back up. And then it's like, what we have this sin with no incentive. So I call it incentive, like for the sin. But yeah, good luck with that. I mean, you'll get bombarded by the sports betting things. And
No, we were already getting bombarded. I know that I've seen what is it? It's the one from Las Vegas, BetGM or something like that. I've seen FanDuel commercials.
Yeah, MGM.
I've already seen all of them. I've already seen all of them starting their advertising. So yeah, they're bombarding us, and it's not as easy because I was going to sign up for one of them just to do some simple betting, and there was all that.
That's how they get you.
We're talking about that whole authentication stuff, and that authentication.
Here, I'll teach you how to do the stock market. That's the best gambling out there right now, the stock market. If you know, I do another show called Stock Market Neophytes that we do on Fridays, me and another guy. We talk about the market and stuff. I'm new to the market, and it's like Las Vegas in the business world.
No, it is. And I've been learning about it. I haven't gotten involved in it, but we have a show that actually comes before mine. Sasha Starr, who also does a chess show, and he is from Ukraine, so he does a show on Ukraine. And it's brave kind of resistance to the Russian invasion. So he does about 3 or 4 shows on the network. But the show he does on Wednesday with Milan, who is a dentist from Canada, so they're both from Canada, Pam and everything, and then they do it with Jim Eade, who is also a chess gentleman out of California, but they are investors, so they have a show called Modern Investing, and they have different views because I think that Sasha is more definitely. Milan believes in investing in the stock market and the U.S. stock market as a whole, so kind of like investing in all of them, whereas Sasha is more targeted in the way he does his investing. But right now he just made a killing because he just came back from his vacation, and I'm not speaking out of school because he brought it up on his own show, because he just came back from Aruba, and as he likes to call it, that was his NVIDIA vacation, because it's the money he made off of the investment.
Oh man, I got a NVIDIA story. So yeah, it's all about timing and researching these companies and doing all that. So SoundHound is an AI company, and I started looking at that. I said, well, AI is coming. I'm going to look at some of these. I looked at this one. They got a really good program. They got a menu and all that. And so I buy the stock, and I'm like, it's just sitting there. And then I sell it, and a week later, NVIDIA comes out and says, oh, we're investing in this company. And it went, Phew! And I'm like, oh, I made like $400 on it, and I just gave up $9,000 in, just that way. But it goes away just as quickly as that. But I did do well on a 3D printing company. I knew their stock was down, and you get them when they're beat down, and and the traders trade them down, and they want people to sell at that low number, and then because they know there's some stuff coming out. There's always somebody smarter in the stock market than you, and if you can catch one of those waves, you can get there quick. Now, you can lose quick. I mean, that's our disclaimer is this show's for entertainment purposes only.
And
do not take this.
That's what we say on this show as well. You can just as lose as quickly, but yeah, he definitely made money on that. Just really quick, and this is the last question in terms of issues, because we will get ready to wind down. But Pam, how important has women's rights and women's issues been in the countries you have visited? Because I know that there's a lot of people that have said that it will be a turning point, whether you are a Biden fan or a Trump fan, in our own United States elections, because there are some people that were frustrated by the Dobbs decision. There are others that praised the Dobbs decision. So and also the whole conversations around, what do you call it? Like the, that's not artificial insemination, but the IMF, I believe it's called, or something like that. But it's that whole notion of some of the other things that are going on with stem cells and all in that space. And I'm probably getting the letters wrong in that way and everything. But how important has that conversation been in those countries that you've been part of?
I've lived in Canada, Korea, Mexico, and Korea right now is it's a pandemic, violence against women. Same in Mexico, and it's in your country and mine. It's everywhere. And I remember a few years ago there was the march on something for Women's Day and this march, and I'm like, ladies, you and I need to turn around and walk right into our own living rooms and our own homes. It starts with the men in our lives. I have to talk to my husband. I have to talk to my sons. I have to talk to my brothers. I have to talk to my father. There's where we make an impact, because if I could do that with those 5 or 10 men, and then, but we don't have the conversations in our own home. And to be really open and frank with you, my husband being from Mexico, we dealt with the machismo stuff. Like, what? No, sorry. Whoa, sit down. And we still have very strong conversations, and not because he's a horrible person. He just doesn't know. Men don't
it's a
know
different mentality.
what y'all are doing. You don't know that when a guy is, you've got men in your life right now that are beating their wives. They are. You know them. You sense it. But do you, and I say you, I mean we, I mean everyone, do you have the courage to sit him down and go, nope, we don't?
That's something that I will not. Injustice is something that gets my dandruff up on that.
But you'd be surprised what is actually going on in people's homes.
Oh, I live in a rough neighborhood.
And it's sweet, but it is not rough neighborhoods.
Well,
it's every neighborhood.
It's everywhere, but it's really in, say, a blue collar working class area.
I would challenge
I
you
gotta
on
take
that.
a 12-pack and all that. Well, and we have people
and this is the conversation, right? Like, if you know the men in your life right now, what's going on, but the men won't talk to the men. But I won't talk to my husband because it's an uncomfortable conversation. And how many of us in our lives just sweep a lot of stuff under the carpet? That's the first thing I talk to women about in their business is what's going on in your life. You need to go talk to somebody about, because if you're not okay, your business isn't going to be okay.
Right.
That makes
And
a lot of sense.
90% of the time, it's the relationships in our lives are not okay because somebody's not saying something that needs to be said.
No, but Pam, along those same lines, and I was just curious, not to push back on you that much and everything.
You can push back.
But how much because I know it's a conversation. We have a show here on the network called Unbreakable Souls, which is man talking to man. So they've definitely had some very difficult conversations and all along those lines. But I sometimes hear women talk about the fact that they talk to each other and talk to each other more than men talk to each other in that sense. But sometimes what I see is a lot of the women talking to each other is not saying all, but in some cases it's surface talk. And I wonder how much of that actual conversation is going on. So how many of these true women friends are actually women friends? And I'm not saying
they're not. You're absolutely correct. It's exactly the same thing, because if I'm going to have a frank conversation, I'm going to have it with her too. What are you accepting in your life? What's going on? You need to go talk to him. And she doesn't want to do it. But her safety and security may be in factor. Like, we don't know like what's going to happen. But we're not having open and honest conversations in our lives about what's really going on. My husband never understood it. Very first anniversary we had, I sat down and go, for happy anniversary. Tell me everything that's wrong in the relationship. He's like, what the hell are you doing? I go, I want to know. We already know all the good stuff. Give me the bad stuff. Let's work on shit. So I'm different. I will have those very frank, open conversations, because I came from a household where I was raped as a child. From my father. Yeah. Oh, yeah, she happens. Lovely. It looked great. Nobody knew. In fact, myself, until I was 40. So this stuff is happening in our homes. So I know that the truth to me means more than anything in the world. So I know that that's why I have that value. A lot of us don't, right? But I know what it looks like and smells like, and I know what's going on in the world. Like, I got this kind of like inner kind of weird sixth sensey shit that goes on because of it, but I can spot y'all across the street, right? So the conversation here needs to be like, what's really going on? Like, why? So sometimes women will accept some of the behaviors because we can't make enough to look after our own families. Like, I know that that's why they're doing it. So I'm here to go, I can help you make money. So
Right.
then you have a
So that's
choice. Because we
Yeah,
don't
that's
have a
what I said.
choice. We just
That's
want
what
choice.
happens.
You want to go
There's a-
back? That's okay. But do you have a choice? Let's make it a choice. So
And we've had listeners that have been watching it as well, and one of them actually brought up a situation that I don't know because I'm not from Hawaii, but DW2 said great advice earlier. But we also had this particular gentleman that talked
Yeah.
about how they were wondering why can police in Hawaii reportedly rape children and only get probation. So that might be even happening, but we'd have to do more.
That's sort of that's a international sex trafficking conversation
Oh,
for another
yeah.
time.
Like, and
One
that's the
thing,
thing that if you'd really know what's really going on, like when you're in the world a little bit more, you'd be surprised at your neighbor, what they're actually doing.
right? Yeah,
It looks good, but it's the wealthy and the poor, and yeah.
Yeah, it's and you know, and our social media is a highlight reel. One of the things
yeah.
that I look at it from is, you know, we have men that aren't men. I call them boys that shave, and anybody that takes advantage of a woman, like you're talking about, and I think a man needs to be like a servant leader. We are the last ones to eat. We put others first. We if someone is having an issue, we are the person that's in there that's supposed to do those things. And I just don't see a lot of men like that. And I see women getting stronger and men getting weaker, and there's a big divide there. There's a lot of women that
There's
are looking
it's
for
huge
a relationship.
conversation.
But
Yeah.
John,
It's a huge-
part of the problem, because my brother worked with, and I hate using this term, and I've said it before that I hate using this term because sometimes if you use the term, you are creating an opportunity for people to become the word that I'm going to use. But there's this notion of people being troubled youth or troubled individuals and everything. And my brother works with some of
Everybody's
those
troubled.
folks in that, and like you said, we're all troubled in one form or another. But he does work with kids that have been and adults that have been in that gang space. And part of what I have observed is that because the homes are so broken and because there is not enough communication and not enough people, speaking of this being the online dinner party, of people sitting at the dinner table and talking to each other and even playing games with each other. Because one of the things I used to love doing, even around family time, like Christmas and Thanksgiving, is we'd get together and after the dinner, we might play spinners, which is like a form of dominoes, or we might play Scrabble, or we might play some other game and do a lot of trash talking with each other. But I think that part of the rise in gangs, and there's been a rise in gangs even here in Durham, North Carolina, and definitely in California and New York, is because they are trying to find a place to belong because they're not getting it at home and everything. So they're trying to find a place to
Sense of
belong.
community is really important. And when you start to speak up and you're the only one in the family, you know you're getting kicked out of the nest. Like I got kicked out. I don't know where the courage came from to do that, but I knew that that was the choice. I didn't want to have to make that choice. But yes, it's very challenging for women. If you financially can't always take care of yourself as well, what are your choices? To get kicked out of the whole family, etc., and try to make it on your own or not? So we're based, and this is men as well, we're all faced with these decisions, and we want to be a part of a community. We want to do all of these things and have, you know, the
Here's a
leave our
question
home
for
or
you,
whatever.
Pamela. You know, and I love what you're saying. And my wife, she was married to an abusive husband, and she volunteers at Sheltering Wings, and you know, talks about that type of stuff. And I think a lot of women that get into situations, it's about security. It's about taking care of your family, and they will
Sometimes
not
it
leave
is.
because of what you're saying. They don't have the money. I think, you know, I work with women and couples on things, and you know, I think one of the things that women look for first is security. I mean, you've heard gold digger, you've heard these phrases, but
That's a
women want
man's way of
security.
saying, that's a man's way of just exerting control, because that's not what we are at all. There's
No,
the odd person that is, but that's not what we want.
No, but before you answer what he was mentioning about security, and I just want to add to that, my frustration, and I consider myself more, this is just me personally, I know that maybe John is more religious than I am, but I definitely consider myself spiritual, don't consider myself necessarily an overt Bible reader and all of that, but I definitely feel a connection to a Most High and a greater being than myself and everything. Some people would call it God, some people might call it Allah, whatever name you want to give it and everything. But I definitely think that we are not the be all and end all. There is definitely God above, and there have definitely been some amazing saints and that have been here. And whether you want to believe in this whole notion of you have to go my way in order to get to the heaven's gates, that I'm still trying to get my head around. So I'm not going with a decision because I personally just think that there's going to be some. Hopefully I'll get there, but I think that whoever makes it to heaven, they might be surprised at who's up there in heaven with them. That's just my own personal opinion and everything. But I could be wrong and I could be right, but I'm not in a rush to get to that answer and everything. But I do get frustrated when, to your point, Pamela, when people are wanting to escape and some of the institutions, whether that's the school or the church, are actually encouraging them to stay. Because I know that there have been some churches that I've been part
That's
of, and
all
they
about
basically
patriarchy and about money.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
That's what it is. And those who have the money are in control. It, like, this is a really big conversation. So I want to be the voice that says we can go make our own money.
Mhm.
And then I don't go anywhere. We don't go anywhere. We don't go anywhere. We just want our own money. We just want our own safety.
You
and
want your
security.
nest. You want to make your nest, and you want to have, the things. You want to buy the things for your nest.
That
I mean,
I want, right? And some people want this or that, but yeah, I think
and it's
it's
freedom.
unfortunate.
Financial freedom is something that is, something everybody should have. Financial freedom, and it's unfortunate, but we go back to that. Make value in yourself. Make yourself valuable, and then have a plan. And you don't want to be our age and have to be scrapping for stuff.
No,
I'm
you
like
don't.
ready to, I've really gotten serious
John,
about
that's
getting
the
done
other
with
thing.
this.
That's the other thing, because we talked about it on this show as well as others here on the network, is that too often we don't have plans, and that's why I'm glad that you're doing the work
Yeah,
you're doing. Because I can tell you that there are a number of people that are even in the entrepreneurial space, and you ask them for a prospectus, you ask them for a business plan, and they look at you as if you were asking them for something that is totally foreign to them, and all along those lines, even though it's something that you need in order to be successful. But a lot of people don't even have a daily ambition of their business, much less a business plan in terms of an extended plan and like a 5-year plan. But some people don't even have the daily plan and all in that space. I know that there was a guest years ago that I had, and I met him through Sri Srinivasan, and he is a entrepreneur type out of, he spent time between Dubai, and I'm trying to think where Ron's from, and New York and everything in that space. And he's talking about how people would oftentimes come to him for investment opportunities, like, they had the next greatest idea and everything. But then when he asked them that very simple question, which is, where's your business plan? They looked at him like he had 5 eyes and everything. So is that something that you've run across, where people are not prepared, Pamela, and have the
Absolutely.
knowledge to create their own plan?
I think one of the things I'm fortunate to have is a little bit more age, and that I remember what business used to really be like, right? When you
Yeah.
had to start a Pizza Hut restaurant, and you needed the money, and you needed to have a marketing and an advertising plan and a hiring plan. You needed to have all these things. Today, the bill is sold that you can start a $10,000 a month business just out in your house with, you don't even need to show your face on the internet. And what's happening as a result of that is they're missing the information that they need. And it's going to cost them a hell of a lot to get that education. And the piece that I want, and it's from buying stuff from shitty people who promise that don't fulfill. And what I want to tell people and be around to say is that this is valuable. It can be done. You just need to have a plan and get out and get to work and find the value of you and the marketplace and where's that match, and then start charging for it and produce something that it does change people's lives. And there's a lot of money in their hills, I say. But I've got another call in just a couple of minutes.
No,
but-
just really quickly, I'm actually wrapping up
Yeah.
the entire show anyway for everybody. But it's the same thing that I asked all the other guests and everything. And I'll start with you, and then I'll end with John, since I started with John and everything. But if you can tell folks how you can be reached, and any message of positivity and hope that you would like to give to our global audience, and then we'll wrap the show with the two of you doing that, because that's generally how I wrap all the shows and everything. So I'll start with you, Pamela, if you want to give a message of encouragement to our global audience.
Sure. So great things happen when women have money. That's the whole message. And it doesn't threaten any man in my life or anybody in my life. I just want that for myself. So I have those choices and the freedom, and that's possible. And that's why this sign says live in possibility. Like, I didn't know it was possible to make $1 million a year until another woman told me she made $1 million a year. And I was like, what? What is that? What are you talking about? And now I'm in with a coach who says you can make $100 million a year. And I thought, well, I could make 10. Like, all of a sudden, I come from Saskatchewan, right? Where I was maybe 40 grand was good money, right? So it's like, I just want to be that voice that says, well, what if it was possible? What would you do differently? If we don't even know it's a possibility, we won't even try. Like, we won't even sail across the, street or whatever, because so I just want to say it's possible. I don't know if it's possible for you, if it's what you want, but just so you know, I'm out here. It's possible for you to make money. It's possible for you to change your life. It's possible. Like, that's all I want to say. And then if you want to come towards me, that's perfect. And you can do so at PamelaJoanDale.com. Just like that.
Sounds good and everything. John, you've been great guests and everything, as well as have you, Pamela, and the other two guests as well. So hopefully I can get all four of you back on another dinner party, another one of these fun conversations, because that's what I do. It's right around dinner time. So that's why it's called the online dinner party. It's kind of like the other gentleman said, it's nuanced conversations where we're learning from each other, and also the audience is learning from us as well. So I greatly enjoy these kind of conversations. So if you want to tell folks how they can reach you and how they can learn about your shows that you've got on, and also hopefully you'll make a return trip either on this or also on our new show as well, and also any message of positivity that you have. And then I'll probably torture y'all as I torture a couple of folks, because I've got a friend of mine that does a food item, and I got to see which one of the brands this is on, because we got different brands on StreamYard. So I think this is the one that has the sweet food and it's vegan sweets as that. Yes, this is the one that has the vegan food. So if y'all look after John says it, y'all are probably gonna be like me every time I see this commercial, going like, that cannot be vegan, that looks too sinful to be vegan and everything. But y'all will see the commercial and see what I'm talking about. But it is an African-American owned company and everything. But definitely, if you'll share your message of positivity and how you can be reached.
Me or Pamela?
Oh, you, John. Pamela already did
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I thought you did. I was like, okay, I got lost in the vegan commercial. Well, we can be reached at, I actually have the Chateau de Mars Hill studio. That's on Facebook. That is where the sort of the parent company, that's what I call our house here in Mars Hill. I live in Mars Hill, Indianapolis, by the airport. It's sort of an underserved neighborhood. We started our art center here about 10 years ago, and people said, you need to live where you serve. So we moved in and find that it's just, we've helped improve this neighborhood. It was rough. It's been a rough neighborhood. And I started this, we call it the Chateau de Mars Hill. I got Concord grapes out there that we inherited with the thing. I make some wine out of it. And it's, so I run the Say It Out Loud show. This is with Cassie Jackson. She is a very liberal ADHD, serious person that, that's halfway crazy. That I do that show with her. We do that on Tuesday before the Mouthwash show at 9 p.m. Every Tuesday we have a show. And that's at Mouthwash Talk Show. It's on Twitter, Mouthwash Talks 1 on Twitter. We have Mouthwash Talk Show on, just look up for our logo and back, and you can see it. We talk about local things. It's always interesting on that part. And then we have the Stock Market Neophytes on Friday. It's like a noon lunch meeting. We talk about the week in review. We have some funny videos on there about the stock market and that, but that's how you can catch us. And then you never know, I might be running for president someday. And you just, say, hey, that crazy guy was on our show. I don't think I want to be running for president ever, but who would want that job even?
Yeah, who would want that job? But we do have a gentleman on the network, Lee Newton Rhodes, that is running for president. We also have an economic show with David Walker, who is one of the founders of No Label. So they're still trying to figure out who their candidate is going to be. So I do know there's some people associated with Pod TV that have some presidential aspirations. But I'm like you. I'm like, why would you want that job? That job looks like too much of a headache. And
I've become more of a behind the scenes. I make kings. I'm a king maker and queen maker. I'm more, like I said, I'd rather work with the women. They seem to be easier to deal with as far as honesty and all that. It seems like guys are always conniving. They're always trying to work some deal around the end or whatever. It's like with the woman, you are going to get a fair shake usually.
Yeah, you will in everything. Definitely. What advice would you give? You had not given advice.
I would give this. We talked about this on the show. Hey, make value in yourself. Do something new. It's you don't just keep doing the same thing, but go out, take a chance. If you want to be a race car driver, go out and start racing cars. If you want to be a mountain climber, go climb a mountain. Make value in yourself and expand your horizon. I would say that would be my dream for you today, is to expand your horizon. Just like coming on these shows, I didn't know you till today. It's been a wonderful time. Don't be afraid. Yeah. Go for it. All that stuff.
I agree.
Like Nike.
Yep.
Just do it.
Be like Nike. Just do it. And
I'll tell you one fun fact about Nike, because I'm a graphic designer. Do you know how much the swoosh sold for when it was first made? You know how much that swoosh?
No, I have no idea, but it's probably like $1 million.
No, $30.
$30?
That's what they sold that swoosh to Nike. Bought it for $30. Now you tell me about your Air Jordans.
Yeah, exactly. The swoosh
You
is
know.
only $30, and that's what's on the Air Jordans and everything.
$30
like that.
started. It's like Apple computer starting in the garage type of deal. You know, it's you got to start somewhere and
You got to start
expand
somewhere.
your
And sometimes
horizons.
you got to be a gadfly as well, because that's what I was going to mention when you mentioned your friend that you consider more liberal than yourself and everything that you have the talk show with. But I know that I've got a couple of friends that are notoriously for being gadfly, so they are noticed for being kind of like in your face all the time, whether you like them or not. So they're kind of that gadfly personality, and I think that every city has them. I know that Jacqueline is one here. There's a couple of other folks that I could name as well, but they are the folks that you know that you might not like them, but you also know that you are gonna get a earful from them, and they're not gonna be afraid to tell you their truth, whether you want to agree with the truth or not.
They're sort of like that eclipse that's coming through our state here in April 8th or whatever it is. It's like it's painful to look at, but I can't help looking at it.
Exactly. That's what those gadflies are. You know that they're going to be there, and they're going to be, you're going to be swatting at them whether you like it or not. But right now, we're going to end the show. Like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed having you and the other guests, but I'm going to let you check out this vegan confectionery. And like I said, every time I see this commercial, I'm going like, that looks too good to be vegan, but apparently it is, because that's what he claims, the founder of this. So we'll go out with this particular
I'll try
commercial.
it. I'll try it.
All right. Try. This was how
Thanks,
we'll close
Mark.
out the show. Appreciate
All right,
it.
see ya.
Yeah. Bye.
Hi, my name is Maria Jones, baker and owner of Very Vegan, a premier mobile bakery specializing in putting a plant-based spin on some of your favorite desserts. Inspired by my own personal experience with my journey with healthier eating habits, I was determined to make comparable items with desirable textures and great taste. We're always experimenting with different flavor profiles and expanding our menu. I enjoy my creative license as well as imparting ideas and requests from my customers. It makes for new and exciting items. Some of our customer faves are the specialty cheesecakes such as the banana pudding with homemade vegan vanilla wafers, strawberry crunch, honey bun, fruity pebbles, peach cobbler, and many others. We also offer moist, rich cupcakes, delectable cookies, decadent brownies, and scrumptious pound cake. Discover how amazingly delicious vegan can be. I am available for orders, or you can purchase my items exclusively at the Black Farmers Hub.